Chapter 315. Seeing that Ji Tianqing didn't know much about the Seven Stars Pagoda, the medicine elder explained it to him in detail. The Seven Stars Pagoda was actually a secret land. After the 8 major sects found this secret land, they all wanted to take it for themselves, so that their disciples could gain experience and improve their strength. After many disputes and negotiations, the 8 major sects reached an agreement to jointly set up a super array to protect the secret land and named it the Seven Stars Pagoda. The Seven Stars Pagoda had 7 floors. From the first floor to the 6th floor, there were various dangers and tests in each floor. Only by passing the tests could one enter the higher floor. The 7th floor was an excellent holy land for cultivation, with all kinds of incredible effects. The 8 major sects had set a rule that the Seven Stars Pagoda would only open once a year. Each sect had a token, which was equivalent to the key to enter the Seven Stars Pagoda. It could only be used by one disciple. The disciples of each sect who entered the Seven Stars Pagoda had to rely on their own ability to pass the levels. Whoever could reach the top of the Seven Stars Pagoda would get great benefits and benefits. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing opened his mouth and asked, "Medicine Elder, may I ask where our sect's token is?" The Medicine Elder quickly replied, "Naturally, it's in Yun Yao's hands." In the past few years, every time the Seven Stars Pagoda opened, she would represent our sect to pass the levels. None of the disciples of other sects could reach the top of the Seven Stars Pagoda. Only our sect's Yun Yao could do it. In the past, our sect also sent Chen Su and Tang Yilua, but they both failed on the 5th floor and failed to reach the top of the Seven Stars Pagoda. Since then, our sect has kept the token to enter the Seven Stars Pagoda with Yun Yao. She knows the situation of the Seven Stars Pagoda better. If you want to know more, you can go to her. Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood and bowed to the medicine elder to thank him. Then, the medicine elder reminded him, there are still 8 days before the Seven Stars Pagoda opens. Ji Ku's condition is still unstable, so I have to help her recuperate for a few days. If you get the Jade Soul Coffin and the key to enter the Seven Stars Pagoda, wait patiently for a few days and prepare to enter the Seven Stars Pagoda in advance. After this old man has helped Ji Ku recuperate, I'll send someone to inform you. At that time, I'll put her into the Jade Soul Coffin. Thank you very much, Medicine Elder. Ji Tianqing thanked him and then left. After leaving the Spirit Medicine Hall, he went straight to the White Cloud Hall on the Red Cloud Peak. Bai Yun Hall was Yun Yao's residence. When he rushed to the White Cloud Hall, Yun Yao was reading ancient books in the study. Hearing his footsteps, Yun Yao put down the ancient book in her hand, turned to look at him, and greeted, "Junior brother Tianqing, are you looking for me?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Eldest senior sister, I came to find you to ask about the Seven Stars Pagoda." Seven Stars Pagoda. Yun Yao frowned and thought for a moment. Then, she said in surprise, "The Seven Stars Pagoda will open in a few days. Do you want to challenge the Seven Stars Pagoda?" "Yes." Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and nodded. "I want to save a good friend, so I need to borrow the power of the Seven Stars Pagoda." Yun Yao frowned slightly and said in a serious tone, "Although the Seven Stars Pagoda is a secret land with great opportunities, it's also very dangerous. Junior brother Tianqing, with your current strength, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for you to break through." Ji Tianqing certainly understood that Yun Yao was not exaggerating. She was sincerely advising him. However, he said firmly, "Eldest senior sister, in order to save a friend, I have to break through." Yun Yao frowned and looked at him with deep eyes. After hesitating for a moment, she took out a silver token from her interspatial ring and handed it to him. "This is the token to enter the Seven Stars Pagoda. Every sect only has one. When the Seven Stars Pagoda opens, only one disciple from each sect can enter. The first 3 levels of the Seven Stars Pagoda are relatively simple. Most of the elite disciples of each sect can pass through them. However, the 4th to 6th levels are extremely difficult and dangerous. Almost everyone can't pass these 3 levels. Originally, I didn't plan to enter the 7 Stars Pagoda this year. I wanted to give this opportunity to junior brother Yen, and let him go to the 7 Stars Pagoda to hone himself. Since you want to go, it's the same for me to give you the token. After that, she introduced the dangers of each level to Ji Tianqing and explained the mysteries of the 7th level. Ji Tianqing listened carefully and memorized every word she said. After Yunyao finished speaking, he put away the token to enter the 7 Stars Pagoda and thanked Yunyao. Breaking through the 7 Stars Pagoda and saving Ji Ku must be done by him. He did not dare to expect Yunyao to help him save Ji Ku. After all, Yunyao and Ji Ku were not related. Yunyao was willing to give him the key to enter the 7 Stars Pagoda, which was already extremely benevolent and made him grateful. After leaving the White Cloud Hall, Ji Tianqing rushed to the Sky-Raising Hall and asked to see his master, Chu Tiansheng. Chu Tiansheng was cultivating in the secret chamber. When he heard that he came to visit, he asked the black-robed guard to lead him into the secret chamber. Tianqing, why are you looking for master? Chu Tiansheng sat cross-legged in the array formation in the secret chamber and asked with a calm expression. Ji Tianqing walked in front of him and stood still. He bowed and said, "Greetings, master. This disciple is here to ask master for a favor. I have a close friend who is a disciple of the Spiritual Medicine Hall's elder. She is in danger and has a difficult problem to solve. The medicine elder told me that if I want to save her, I can only let her sleep in the Jade Soul Coffin at the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda and use the power of the stars to save her. So, this disciple boldly wants to borrow the Jade Soul Coffin from master. I hope master can help me." After listening to these words, Chu Tiansheng showed a surprised look and asked, "Tianqing, you want to go to the 7 Stars Pagoda? The 7th floor of the 7 Stars Pagoda is full of dangers and dangers. The slightest carelessness will cost you your life." Ji Tianqing cupped his fists and said with a firm expression, "Master, this disciple must take the risk in order to save her." Chu Tianqing frowned and weighed the pros and cons for a moment before saying in a solemn tone, "Since you insist on going, master will not stop you. The 7 Stars Pagoda is very dangerous. If you go there, you can also use it to temper yourself and improve your strength. Master can lend you the Jade Soul Coffin, but this thing is one of the most precious treasures of our sect. It is very rare and precious. You must take good care of it and place it properly. It cannot be lost." When Ji Tianqing saw him nod in agreement, he immediately said gratefully, "Thank you, master. This disciple will follow master's orders and will not let the Jade Soul Coffin be damaged." Chu Tiansheng nodded and slowly extended his left palm. A silver brilliance appeared in his palm and a thumb-sized white jade box immediately appeared. This thumb-sized white jade box had a rectangular shape and was carved into the shape of a lifelike coffin. It was the Sky Pillar sect's most precious treasure, the Jade Soul Coffin. If one wanted to use the Jade Soul Coffin, they needed to use a special spell to open the formation on the Jade Soul Coffin. Only then could it become a real coffin. After Ji Tianqing accepted the Jade Soul Coffin, Chu Tiansheng taught him a set of mysterious spells to use the Jade Soul Coffin. Ji Tianqing listened attentively and remembered every word Chu Tiansheng said. After an hour, he had successfully mastered the spell to open and use the Jade Soul Coffin. Chu Tiansheng took out 2 talismans and a fist-sized silver ball and gave them to him. "Tianqing, this time you will be going to the 7 Stars Pagoda. It will be very dangerous. You may even encounter life-threatening danger." Chapter 316. The Jade Soul Coffin and the key to enter the 7 Stars Pagoda were both in his hands. What Ji Tianqing needed to do next was to wait and prepare. After returning to the Tianqing courtyard, he did not waste any time. He quickly entered the secret chamber to practice and improve his strength. When the 7 Stars Pagoda opened, he would enter the 7 Stars Pagoda. At that time, he would not only have to face all kinds of dangers and tests, but also the elite disciples of each sect. He had to improve his strength as much as possible. After entering the 7 Stars Pagoda, he was bound to pass all the tests and reach the top. In order to save Ji Ku, he had to succeed. He could not fail. Soon after, Ji Tianqing held his breath and focused his mind, entering a focused state of cultivation. Now that he had reached LV5 of the mystic comprehending realm, one of the apertures in the 5th sword vein had been refined. He used his own gold genuine essence and the power of the red flame genuine fire to refine the 2nd aperture. This process was very slow. As his strength became stronger, the speed of his strength improvement would inevitably become slower. In the Tianjian sect, on the Divine Sword Peak. In a dimly lit secret chamber full of spiritual qi, the Tianjian sect master was sitting on a big jade chair. In front of him stood a young man in a white robe with a dignified appearance. This young man was about 25 or 26 years old. He was tall and burly, handsome, and dignified. He exuded confidence and arrogance. This man was the chief disciple of the Tianjian sect, Shi Wenyu. Shi Wenyu bowed to the sect master of the Heavenly Sword sect and asked respectfully, "Master, do you have any instructions for summoning this disciple?" The Tianjian sect master nodded slightly and asked, "Wenyu, the 7 Stars Pagoda will open in a few days. Are you ready?" Shi Wenyu smiled confidently and quickly cupped his hands. "Master, although I failed every time I entered the 7 Stars Pagoda, my swordsmanship has made a breakthrough this year. My strength has also increased by 2 levels to LV9 of the mystic comprehending realm. I am confident that I can enter the 7th level and become the 2nd person after Yun Yao to reach the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda." Seeing how confident Shi Wenyu was, the Tianjian sect master smiled with relief. He nodded and said encouragingly, "Wenyu, it's good that you're so confident. I also hope that you can win this honor and show the other sects the strength of the Tianjian sect." Shi Wenyu cupped his fists and said confidently, "Disciple will do his best and not disappoint master." Very good." The Tianjian sect master nodded with satisfaction and said in a serious tone, "However, I summoned you here today because I have a more important task for you." Shi Wenyu saw his solemn expression and understood the importance of this matter. He said seriously, "Master, please enlighten me." The Tianjian sect master said in a low voice, "At the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda, there are many heavenly treasures. One of them is called the Soul Crystal. This item is very important to us and is even related to the rise of our sect. After you enter the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda, you must obtain this treasure and bring it back." After listening to the Tianjian sect master's instructions, Shi Wenyu suddenly frowned and asked doubtfully, "Master, since the soul crystal is so precious, Yun Yao will definitely snatch it from me. Moreover, she has entered the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda many times. Could it be that she has already taken the soul crystal?" The Tianjian sect master sneered and said in a firm tone, "Of course not. Yun Yao definitely doesn't have the guts to take the soul crystal. The soul crystal is located in the 7 Stars Array. Not only is it hidden very well, but it is also the core of the 7 Stars Array. Once you take the soul crystal, the 7 Stars Array will collapse, and the 7 Stars Pagoda will be implicated and even collapse." Shi Wenyu's face was full of surprise. He didn't expect the Tianjian sect master to give him such a shocking task. The Tianjian sect master continued, "Wenyu, you don't have to worry about the consequences of doing this. Just follow my orders. After you take the soul crystal and the 7 Stars Pagoda collapses and is destroyed, you can try to push the blame to Yun Yao. In the past few years, except for Yun Yao, no one has been able to reach the 7th floor. If you frame her with this matter, all the major sects will believe it without a doubt." Shi Wenyu nodded solemnly and cupped his fists. "I understand. I will follow master's orders." "Well, very good. You may leave." The Tianjian sect master nodded with satisfaction. Shi Wenyu bowed and left the secret chamber. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in seclusion in the secret chamber for 7 days. Finally, he had refined 2 more acupoints and his strength had improved a lot. In the evening, he ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. Not long after he returned to his room, his maid, Xiao Shuang, came to report the news. Senior brother Ji, the senior brother named Su Qin, came to visit again at noon today. He asked Xiao Shuang to tell you that everything is ready. As soon as Ji Tianqing heard this, he understood that the medicine elder was definitely prepared. He quickly left the Tianqing courtyard and rushed to the spiritual herbal hall to find the medicine elder. When he met the medicine elder, he was still in the secret chamber. Ji Ku was still lying unconscious on the Millennium Spirit Jade. Her body was surrounded by a pale blue brilliance, and her face was calm and serene. Even though she was unconscious and her consciousness was fuzzy, she was still murmuring unconsciously. Every once in a while, she would call out, "Brother Tianqing." Seeing her like this, Ji Tianqing was full of tenderness and worry. He secretly made up his mind to help her solve the disaster in front of her. The medicine elder's face was full of fatigue, but there was a touch of relief in his eyes. "Tianqing, this old man has helped Ji Ku recuperate her body and temporarily suppressed the alien power sealed in her soul. Later, we will put Ji Ku into the jade soul coffin. Tomorrow morning, you can set off for the 7 Stars Pagoda." "Thank you, medicine elder. I have troubled you." Ji Tianqing thanked him sincerely. The medicine elder waved his hand and said with a bitter smile, "Why are you thanking this old man? This old man is Ji Ku's master. This is what I should do." Ji Tianqing did not say anything more. He circulated his true essence and cast a special spell to bring out the jade soul coffin. Swoosh! A light flashed in his palm, and a jade box the size of a thumb appeared. He cast a spell to make the jade box bigger. Soon, it became a 5-meter long and 3-meter wide spirit jade coffin. The carvings on the coffin were vivid and lifelike. The entire coffin exuded a vast and majestic spirit qi. Obviously, its effects were extraordinary. Under the medicine elder's guidance, Ji Tianqing slowly lifted Ji Ku up. His movements were gentle as he carefully placed her into the jade soul coffin. Ji Ku was sleeping in the jade soul coffin. The coffin constantly released an invisible spirit qi that lingered around her body, protecting her closely. After that, Ji Tianqing cast a special spell to shrink the huge coffin into a jade box the size of a thumb and put it back into his spatial ring. Chapter 317. The next morning, Ji Tianqing rode on Qianyu and left the Sky Pillar sect. Facing the rising sun, Qianyu flew towards the center of the star ancient realm. It flew for half a day and arrived at the bottom of the 7 Stars Pagoda after 12 hours. It was already evening, and night was about to fall. Qianyu landed on a towering mountain peak. In the center of the mountain peak stood a towering pagoda that was as huge as a mountain peak. It was an octagonal pagoda that was bronze in color. Its bottom was connected to the mountain peak and its top was connected to the sky. It exuded an incomparably majestic aura. The bronze pagoda was divided into 7 floors, each of which was more than 300 meters tall. The top 2 floors were shrouded in clouds and mist, making it difficult to see clearly. Ji Tianqing looked up for a moment and saw the pagoda's appearance. The pagoda had 8 corners that were octagonal in shape. It looked magnificent, vast, and imposing. There was a huge copper lamp at each corner, and the lamps were engraved with lifelike divine dragons and fire birds. The body of the pagoda was ancient and rough, with many mysterious patterns carved on it. There were also some special symbols. On the first floor of the pagoda, there was a black door that was 100 meters tall. This door was tightly shut and flickered with a faint 5-colored brilliance. It was obviously the power of a formation. In addition, there was a narrow ladder on the side of the pagoda that led directly to the 4th floor. There was also a door on the 4th floor of the pagoda that was the same size as the door on the 1st floor. It was simple and unadorned. These 2 doors were the only entrances to the pagoda. This is the legendary 7 Stars Pagoda. Ji Tianqing looked at it for a moment and could not help but whisper. This 7 stars pagoda was not man-made and was not controlled by the 8 great sections. Legend had it that this mysterious and unadorned 7 stars pagoda was not an ordinary thing, but a divine object that fell from the sky. In the distant ancient times, this 7 stars pagoda fell from the sky like a meteor and fell into the star ancient realm. After the pagoda landed, it smashed into the depths of the earth and hid in the mountains. No one knew about it. After thousands of years of slow recovery and growth, the pagoda gradually recovered its power and emerged from the depths of the earth. About 10 years ago, this 7 stars pagoda appeared from the top of the mountain, as if it had appeared out of thin air overnight. Later on, several sex experts accidentally discovered the 7 stars pagoda. When they entered the 7-star pagoda with doubts, they found that there was another world inside the pagoda. Furthermore, the 7 floors of the pagoda represented the 7 worlds. They did not disturb each other but were connected to each other. Every level contained abundant mineral resources and natural treasures. Moreover, they were all ownerless and could be plucked at will. The closer the world was to the top of the tower, the richer the treasures and resources it contained. Thus, the powerhouses of the various sects began to crazily plunder the 7-star pagoda for resources. After the news spread, all the major sects rushed over and joined in the plundering and pillaging operation. However, conflicts soon broke out between the various sects, which led to one battle after another. In the end, in order to prevent the 8 great sects from killing each other and causing a chaotic war, the experts of the various sects had no choice but to sit down and discuss. After many discussions and coordination, the 8 great sects finally decided to jointly control the 7 stars pagoda and set up the Tianyuan Grand Array to protect the pagoda. The 7 stars pagoda would open once a year. Each sect could only send one disciple into the pagoda to climb to a higher level and search for more precious resources and treasures. Unfortunately, in recent years, except for Yun Yao who had climbed to the 7th floor of the 7 stars pagoda, none of the other sect's disciples had been able to enter the 7th floor. Ji Tianqing looked at the 7 stars pagoda for a while and saw that several young martial artists had gathered in the open space below the pagoda, so he walked over. The open space with a radius of 100 meters was paved with black stone slabs, and there was a 10-meter-tall array platform in the middle. This was obviously built by the people of the 8 great sects, and the array in the array platform was the key to opening the 7 stars pagoda. When Ji Tianqing came to the open space, several young martial artists in the field also turned their heads to look at him. When those people saw his appearance, they suddenly showed surprised and puzzled expressions and whispered to each other. "Hey, isn't this guy a disciple of the Sky Pillar sect? Strange, the Sky Pillar sect's Yunya didn't come. They actually sent him to challenge the 7 stars pagoda. I know this guy. I saw him on the star platform during the 8 sect council. He's the disciple of the Sky Pillar sect's sect master. I think his name is Ji Tianqing. Yes, I remember that this guy's strength is very weak. It seems that he hasn't become an elite disciple yet, right?" These young martial artists were all chief disciples of their respective sections. They had seen Ji Tianqing at the 8 sect council before. Everyone's impression of him was still at that time. They didn't know that he had defeated Chen Su and Tang Ilua in the Heaven List tournament and became the second genius of the Sky Pillar sect. Among them, there was a beautiful woman with a slim figure, a dignified face, and an elegant temperament. She was the chief disciple of the Heart Moon sect, Feng Min. The young man standing beside her was the chief disciple of the 6 Unity sect, Wu Yu. He had previously worked with Feng Min and Ji Tianqing to destroy the demon cave. There was also a handsome young man in the crowd. He was the chief disciple of the Thousand Autumns sect, Xiao Xian. Back then, on the star platform, this person had also seen Ji Tianqing. At this moment, when Xiao Xian saw that the person from the Sky Pillar sect was Ji Tianqing and not Yun Yao, he couldn't help but reveal a disappointed expression. As soon as Ji Tianqing walked over, he snorted with a displeased expression, "Humph. Did the people from the Sky Pillar sect take the wrong medicine? They didn't send Yun Yao to challenge the 7 Stars Pagoda, but sent a brat instead? Xiao Xian didn't deliberately lower his voice, so the young disciples beside him heard it. Everyone immediately quieted down and looked at Ji Tianqing playfully, wanting to see his reaction. Ji Tianqing originally saw 2 acquaintances and was about to come over to greet them. But when he suddenly heard Xiao Xian's cold snort, he couldn't help but frown. He looked at Xiao Xian coldly and said indifferently, "If you criticize my Sky Pillar sect again, I'll make you crawl away." It was a very short sentence, but it contained an unquestionable domineering and fierce aura. Xiao Xian was immediately stunned, and several young martial artists also showed surprised expressions as they looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. Everyone couldn't believe that Ji Tianqing had the guts to humiliate Xiao Xian in public. Xiao Xian was so angry that his face turned ashen. He glared at Ji Tianqing and shouted in a deep voice, "Brat, what did you say?" Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently and said coldly, "I told you to keep your mouth clean, or I'll shut you up." "Hee, you're very arrogant, brat." Xiao Xian was so angry that he laughed, and a cold light surged in his eyes. "If Yun Yao were here, I would naturally respect her. But who do you think you are? How dare you talk to me like this? You're courting death." Xiao Xian was already depressed, and being humiliated by Ji Tianqing in public, he was naturally furious. Chapter 318. Xiao Xian was the chief disciple of the Thousand Autumns sect and had the strength of a LV8 Tongxian realm martial artist. Xiao Xian realm martial artist's palm strike was extremely powerful and caused a gust of wind to blow. Everyone retreated. Ji Tianqing's expression did not change. He calmly extended his left hand and punched out. Bam! His fiery red fist radiance collided with Xiao Xian's blue palm shadow and exploded with a loud bang. The violent energy exploded, blowing everyone's clothes into the air. Dust was also blown up in the air. What was inconceivable was that Ji Tianqing stood on the spot without moving, but Xiao Xian was forced back 8 steps and almost fell to the ground. Xiao Xian was stunned. He stared at Ji Tianqing with his eyes wide open in disbelief. The surrounding young martial artists also exclaimed in disbelief. Even Feng Min and Wu Yu revealed astonishment in their eyes. They did not expect that Ji Tianqing's strength would increase so much in just a month. He was actually stronger than Xiao Xian. However, the crowd did not know that Ji Tianqing did not use his full strength. If he used his full strength and his trump card, Xiao Xian would not be his match. After all, Xiao Xian, who was at LV8 Tongxian realm, was about the same strength as Tang Yilua. Xiao Xian came back to his senses and his expression became uglier. The anger in his eyes surged. He stared at Ji Tianqing with a ferocious expression and sneered, "Ha, no wonder you're so arrogant. You have some skills." Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently and said, "It's more than enough to kill you. You're fucking courting death." Xiao Xian suppressed his anger and immediately burst out. He cursed with a twisted face and a blue light surged from his body. He was going to explode with his full strength. However, right at this moment, Feng Min and Wu Yu arrived beside him without making a sound. They stretched out their palms and pressed on Xiao Xian's shoulders. "Xiao Xian, stop. Fighting in front of everyone, aren't you afraid of embarrassing the Thousand Autumns sect? Junior brother Qiao, the 7 Stars Pagoda is about to open. Do you want to cause trouble at this time?" Feng Min and Wu Yu's strength were both not weaker than Xiao Xian. The two people attacking at the same time immediately suppressed Xiao Xian, making it difficult for him to erupt with true essence. Xiao Xian turned to look at the two of them and frowned. He had no choice but to suppress the anger in his heart. Humph. Since you two are trying to persuade me, I'll spare that brat for now. In fact, he was just taking the opportunity to find a way out. After all, he didn't want to shed all pretense of cordiality with the Sky Pillar sect's disciples and fight them in public. Most importantly, he could tell that Ji Tianqing was not someone to be trifled with. he might not be able to beat him. Seeing that Xiao Xian had suppressed his anger, Wu Yu and Feng Min walked towards Ji Tianqing. Junior brother Ji, we meet again. Junior brother Ji, how have you been? The two of them smiled and cupped their hands, greeting Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing also cupped his hands in return and exchanged a few pleasantries with the two of them. The other young disciples were standing not far away and discussing in low voices. They looked at Ji Tianqing with complicated expressions. Previously, they didn't put Ji Tianqing in their eyes. Now that they knew, they didn't dare to look down on and ridicule him. At this moment, a tall and sturdy young man in a white robe strode into the open space with his head held high. Seeing this person arrive, several young disciples went up to greet him with smiles on their faces. Senior brother Shi, you're finally here. Senior brother Wenyu, why are you the last to arrive? Hee. Looking at senior brother Wenyu's confident appearance, it seems that you're very confident in entering the 7th floor this time. The person who came was the chief disciple of the Tianjian sect, Shi Wenyu. The young disciples surrounding him all belonged to sects that had good relations with the Tianjian sect. Xiao Xian, who had been humiliated in public, also surrounded Shi Wenyu. He said to Shi Wenyu in a playful tone, Senior brother Wenyu, who do you think the Sky Pillar sect sent to enter the 7 Stars Pagoda this time? Shi Wenyu froze for a moment and asked with a frown, isn't it Yun Yao? Of course not. Xiao Xian sneered. He turned his head and glanced at Ji Tianqing not far away, and said in a gloomy tone, it's that brat. Shi Wenyu's eyes flashed and he immediately turned his head to look at Ji Tianqing. He remained calm and collected on the surface, but he secretly muttered in his heart, great. Yun Yao didn't come. After I enter the 7th floor, I'll definitely complete the task given to me by Master. At this time, Xiao Xian used a secret sound transmission technique and quietly said to Shi Wenyu, Senior brother Wenyu, this brat is very arrogant. He just said in public that only he can enter the 7th floor. Shi Wenyu's eyes turned gloomy. He glanced at Ji Tianqing and nodded. I've seen him on the star platform. This brat really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. If Yun Yao is qualified to say that, then who does he think he is? Ha! With me, Shi Wenyu, here, this little loach can't stir up any trouble. Seeing that Shi Wenyu was staring at Ji Tianqing with strong hostility, Xiao Xian also revealed a sneer of success. After a while, all the disciples of the 8 sects had arrived. Everyone boarded the array platform and surrounded a circular array disc. There were 8 grooves on the millstone-sized array disc. Their shapes, sizes, and patterns were the same as the tokens in everyone's hands. Everyone took out their respective tokens and placed them in the grooves on the array disc. As a result, the array disc began to slowly rotate, emitting a 5-colored array brilliance. The Tianyuan array protecting the 7 Stars Pagoda was activated, and an oval-shaped light door appeared in front of everyone. Only after passing through the light door could they enter the array and arrive at the entrance of the 7 Stars Pagoda. Everyone put away their tokens and looked up at the entrance of the first floor of the 7 Stars Pagoda. Shi Wenyu looked around and glanced at everyone. He smiled and said, Junior brothers and sisters, it's time to challenge the pagoda again. Who will go first this time? Several young disciples began to discuss with different expressions. Senior brother Wenyu is full of confidence. Why don't you go first? Senior brother Shi, you go first. Yun Yao didn't come this year. The person who can enter the 7th floor must be senior brother Wenyu. At this moment, Ji Tianqing, who had been silent all this time, stepped into the light door first. Swoosh! His figure flashed and passed through the Tianyuan array and arrived at the entrance of the 7 Stars Pagoda. Shi Wenyu and the other young disciples' faces suddenly changed, and they all turned to look at Ji Tianqing. Ha! This kid is really arrogant. With senior brother Wenyu here, this kid still dares to be the first to challenge the pagoda. He doesn't take senior brother Wenyu seriously at all. Heh, this is the first time this kid has come to challenge the pagoda. He must be a hothead. Let's see how he will be ejected from the pagoda later. I bet this kid can't even pass the first 3 floors. Just as everyone was gloating, Ji Tianqing turned and walked to the side of the pagoda. Under everyone's puzzled gaze, he stepped on the narrow ladder on the side of the pagoda and directly ascended to the 4th floor of the 7 Stars Pagoda. He ignored the first 3 floors and started from the 4th floor of the 7 Stars Pagoda. Chapter 319. Oh my god, is this kid crazy? It's his first time here and he's starting from the 4th level. He's overestimating himself. Hee, Ji Tianqing is really a hothead who doesn't know his limits. Ha ha ha. Everyone, just wait and see. In 15 minutes, that kid will fail and be ejected from the 7-star pagoda. Seeing that Ji Tianqing had directly entered the 4th floor, the few young disciples all revealed a gloating sneer, and they unscrupulously mocked and talked about him. Feng Min and Wu Yu naturally wouldn't open their mouths to talk about Ji Tianqing, much less mock him. However, their expressions and eyes showed that they did not know whether to laugh or cry. Obviously, they felt that Ji Tianqing was too confident. Sigh. It's junior brother Ji's first time here and he's so reckless. Wu Yu sighed softly. If he had started from the 1st level honestly, with his talent and strength, it would not be a problem for him to pass the first 3 levels. Yes. Feng Min nodded in agreement and said with a regretful tone, if he passes the first 3 levels, he will gain a lot of benefits. But if he starts from the 4th level and fails later, he won't gain anything and will be ejected. There were 2 doors to enter the 7-star pagoda. Under normal circumstances, disciples from various sects would enter from the 1st level of the pagoda and go up 1 level at a time. Every level of the pagoda was a small world. There were risks and tests, but there were also many benefits and resources. The first 3 levels were relatively simple. Disciples from various sects would go through them one by one and gain many benefits. Among the disciples from various sects, other than Yun Yao who had the strength and qualifications to start from the 4th level, no one else dared to do so. No one expected that Ji Tianqing would imitate Yun Yao and directly start from the 4th floor on his first attempt at the pagoda. In fact, Ji Tianqing's purpose for coming to the 7-star pagoda was different from the disciples from various sections. The disciples from various sects wanted to gain as much cultivation resources as possible in the 7-star pagoda to improve their strength. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, wanted to save Ji Ku. He only wanted to reach the top of the 7-star pagoda as soon as possible and place the Jade Soul coffin. It was precisely because of this that he couldn't be bothered to start from the 1st level. He didn't want to waste time. Schwa. The black door to the 4th floor of the 7 Stars Pagoda opened. Ji Tianqing stepped through the door and disappeared in a flash. In the open space below the tower, the crowd saw that he had really entered the 4th level and discussed for a while. Qiao Xian had a cold smile on his face as he said, haha, that brat indeed entered the 4th level. Truly, the ignorant are fearless. I'd like to see how long that brat can last. In at most 15 minutes, he will fail and be ejected from the 7 Stars Pagoda. The chief disciple of the true martial sect also nodded in agreement. Let's not rush into the pagoda. Let's wait here for 15 minutes and see how disheveled that kid will be when he gets ejected. The Wind-Fire sect disciple looked at Shi Wenyu beside him. Seeing his gloomy face, he smiled and said, Senior brother Wenyu, Yun Yao didn't come to challenge this time. Only you can reach the 7th level. How can you let that brat steal the limelight? Shi Wenyu frowned and said in a cold tone, everyone, stay here and watch the show. I'll make a move first. After saying that, he also stepped through the light door and walked toward the suspended ladder on the side of the 7 Stars Pagoda. In a moment, he stepped on the suspended ladder and ascended to the 4th level. He took out the silver token and opened the black stone door. He also began to challenge from the 4th level. The disciples in the open space whispered a few words to each other. There's a good show to watch now. It seems that senior brother Wenyu has been angered by that brat. Ha, let's wait and see the result. Let's see who will successfully enter the 5th level between Shi Wenyu and Ji Tianqing. At most 15 minutes, if the copper lamp on the octagonal cornice of the 4th level of the pagoda lights up, it means that they have succeeded. Everyone, take your time and watch. I'll make a move first. Soon, several disciples stepped through the light door and began to challenge the 1st level of the 7 Stars Pagoda. Xiao Xian and the 2 young disciples were not in a hurry to challenge the pagoda. They stood under the pagoda and looked up at the 4th level, waiting to see Ji Tianqing make a fool of himself. Ji Tianqing stood on a wide street and looked around expressionlessly. The street under his feet was flat and neat. On both sides of the street were rows of high-rise houses and rows of shops. There was an endless stream of pedestrians hurriedly walking through the street or lingering between the shops. The hawking of the peddlers and the laughter of the pedestrians constantly came from all directions. There were also many martial artists carrying swords and sabers. Their auras were valiant and overbearing. They walked through the street quickly like the wind, and the collision of their swords and sabers made crisp clanging sounds. When the commoners in plain clothes saw these martial artists passing by, they immediately panicked and moved far away in awe. This is actually a city. There are so many commoners and martial artists living in the city. Ji Tianqing looked around, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. Before coming to the 7 Stars Pagoda, Yun Yao had introduced the situation of the 7 Stars Pagoda to him. The world in the first 3 levels of the pagoda was fixed and did not have much danger or difficulty. However, from the 4th level onwards, the world in the pagoda became more difficult and mysterious. According to Yun Yao, the world in the 4th level was an illusory world. In this small world, there would be all kinds of illusions, such as a world of ice and snow, a volcano with flowing lava, a vast primitive forest, or a vast ocean. Yun Yao entered the 4th level of the 7 Stars Pagoda every year, and the illusory world she encountered was different. Therefore, she could not sum up any experience to pass on to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing could only rely on himself to slowly explore and observe to gradually understand this city. He walked on the street and looked around with keen eyes to explore the city's situation. It was early in the morning, and the morning fog that shrouded the city was gradually dispersing. There was a breakfast shop at the corner of the street, and the aroma of porridge and buns kept coming out. There were many commoners sitting around tables, eating porridge on benches and eating meat buns with relish. An orange-red sun was rising from the western horizon. The sun is rising from the west. When he saw this scene, Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment and thought that he was going in the wrong direction. However, after he checked again and again, he was sure that he was not going in the wrong direction. It's really strange. The sun is rising from the west. Ji Tianqing muttered in his heart. He felt that this city was giving off a strange aura. At this moment, a few shrill screams came from the bun shop 10 meters in front of him. A tall and sturdy middle-aged warrior with a lofty face rushed out of the shop with a treasured saber in his hand. This person had dark skin and 2 scars on his face. He was emitting a valiant murderous aura, and the blade of the treasured saber in his hand was still dripping with dark red blood. In the shop, the white-haired old shopkeeper was lying motionless on the counter. His neck had been cut off, and blood was gushing out from the wound. There were a few corpses lying on the ground, including the waiter, the steaming bun master, and a few innocent diners and commoners. Everyone was killed with a single slash. Their necks were cut off, and their heads rolled to the side. Blood splattered on the ground, the walls, and the tables. The diners in the bun shop were so frightened that they fled in panic, and they screamed in horror. The aroma of porridge and buns was immediately covered by the thick smell of blood. The scarred man, who was brimming with killing intent, laughed sinisterly when he saw everyone fleeing in panic. Chapter 320. Ji Tianqing hadn't figured out what was going on in this city when he saw such a shocking scene. In just a few breaths, a few more people who couldn't escape in time were slashed to the ground by the scarred man. Blood sprayed everywhere. Several heads rolled on the ground, leaving a trail of blood along the way. A stream of blood spurted in front of Ji Tianqing, almost spilling on his white robe. There was also a white-haired old man's head, which rolled to his feet. He stared at him with wide eyes, which were full of fear and despair. Ji Tianqing's face became cold. Anger rose in his heart, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. Too cruel, too inhumane. He didn't hesitate to pull out the black dragon's sword and slashed at the scarred man 10 steps away. The man was still chasing after an old woman who was staggering and holding a walking stick. She was still holding 2 meat buns wrapped in paper tightly in her hands. Bang! In the muffled sound, the dazzling sword light from the black dragon's sword slashed at the treasured sword in the scarred man's hand. The heavy treasured sword flew out, and the scarred man was also knocked to the ground. His left hand covered his broken right arm, and he struggled to get up. Ji Tianqing's figure flashed and came in front of the scarred man. He lifted his foot and stomped on his chest. Bang! The scarred man's chest caved in, and he spat out a stream of blood. He was seriously injured by Ling Yun's foot and lay on the ground, unable to move. Ji Tianqing stared at him with a cold face and asked in a cold voice, "Why? They are all innocent people. Why do you want to kill them? What grudge do they have with you? How can you be so cruel and inhumane?" The scarred man stared at Ji Tianqing with his eyes wide open and roared in a low voice, "Little bastard, it's none of your business. I ate 2 meat buns, and they put coriander in them. Of course, I want to kill their whole family." Ji Tianqing was stunned. He only felt that his understanding of good and evil in human nature had been subverted. Such an insignificant matter actually made the knife-scarred man go crazy and kill people on the street, and he even said it so confidently and confidently. What was wrong with this world? How could this city be so strange? Ji Tianqing glared at the scarred man and shouted angrily, "You crazy executioner, you deserve to die." The scar-faced man stretched out his hands and tried his best to pull his ankles. He struggled to get up and roared at the top of his lungs, "Do you need a reason to kill? Who asked you to be a busybody? You're really stubborn." Ji Tianqing didn't want to waste any more words with him. He held the black dragon and pierced through his chest. Pooh! The blade pierced through the scarred man's heart, and blood spurted out from the wound. His body immediately stiffened, and his eyes widened as he stopped moving. Ji Tianqing withdrew the black dragon's sword, only to discover that the scarred man's body had ignited with golden flames. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into thin air. The blazing golden flames turned into a wisp of golden true essence and quickly entered his body. He immediately felt that the wisp of pure golden true essence merged with his true essence, increasing his strength a little. It was equivalent to 2 days of closed-door cultivation. This. Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment, and his expression became a little strange. He secretly pondered for a moment, and vaguely guessed something. He turned and left. The street corner, which had been bustling with people just a moment ago, immediately became dead silent. Not even the shadow of a ghost could be seen. Ji Tianqing passed through an alley and came to another street. This street was still bustling with noise and excitement. The pedestrians were calm and relaxed, as if they didn't know about the tragedy that happened on the next street. Ji Tianqing walked on the street with a normal expression. After silently observing for a while, he found a clue. He found that the doors of the shops on both sides of the street had a palm-sized mark engraved on the door frame. It looked like a badge. He walked in front of a cloth shop and stared at the badge on the door frame. In the black badge, there was actually a black spider carved on it. It looked sinister and eerie, revealing a strange feeling. At this moment, there was a rush of horse hooves on the street behind him. 6 valiant warriors in black, wearing masks, and riding 6 tall wild wind wildebeests, rushed over from the end of the street. The 6 warriors in black were like a gust of wind blowing through the street, knocking away all the people who didn't have time to dodge. They rushed to a pharmacy and stopped in front of it. Swish! Swish! The 6 of them jumped down from their horses, and rushed into the drugstore like tigers and wolves, carrying their treasured sabers that were shining with a cold light. The surrounding people were suddenly scared and fled in all directions. They screamed in horror and left the basket of vegetables, parcels, and some sundries on the ground. Run! The horse gang is here. Run for your life. There were not many people in the pharmacy in the early morning. There were only the shopkeeper, 2 doctors, and a few old people who were in their twilight years. They were asking for medical treatment. After the 6-horse gang in black rushed into the pharmacy, they waved their swords and killed the shopkeeper and the doctors without saying anything. Swish! 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 They killed the shopkeeper and the doctors with a few chopped heads rolling on the ground. A few old people with white hair were so scared that they fell to the ground. They rolled and crawled out of the door to escape. But before they could run a few steps, they were kicked out by the horse gang in black, or their necks were chopped off by the swords. Suddenly, the pharmacy became a mess. The smell of blood rushed to their faces. After the black-clothed bandits killed the man, they rummaged through the medicine store for medicinal herbs and put all kinds of medicinal herbs into linen bags. In a short time, the 6-horse gang had a few big bags of medicinal herbs. They were about to leave the pharmacy and escape. At this moment, Ji Tianqing appeared at the door of the pharmacy with a gloomy face. He held the black dragon sword in his hand and blocked the way of the horse gang. The 6-horse gang stared at him coldly and shouted angrily in a low voice. "Brat, get lost. You're courting death. Meddling in other people's business. Go to hell." At the same time, the 6-horse gang in black wielded their swords and charged at Ji Tianqing with murderous intent. They started to besiege him. The 6 of them were at LV2 or LV3 of the Tongxian realm. When they joined forces to besiege Ji Tianqing, the radiance of their swords and sabers flashed. A violent gust of wind blew in all directions, shattering the medicine cabinet and the door. Ji Tianqing waved the black dragon sword with a cold expression. He exerted all his strength and slashed out dozens of dazzling sword radiances. Bang! 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 After a series of dull sounds of sword radiances colliding, the 6-horse gang in black were sent flying and lay on the ground with blood all over their bodies. After exchanging a few blows, the 6-horse gang in black were killed by Ji Tianqing on the spot. Their corpses burned with golden flames and soon disappeared into thin air. They turned into wisps of golden vital essence and entered Ji Tianqing's body. After the 6 wisps of pure vital essence merged with his vital essence, his strength increased by a large margin. Ji Tianqing put away the black dragon sword and was about to leave the medicine store. At this moment, he suddenly heard the sound of fighting and terrified screams coming from a restaurant 100 meters away. He immediately used the shadowless step and turned into an afterimage. He dashed into the restaurant as fast as the wind. Just as he rushed into the restaurant's lobby, he saw that the lobby was in a mess. Countless tables and chairs were shattered into pieces and scattered on the ground. Dozens of corpses covered in blood were lying on the ground in different postures. Large patches of blood were splattered on the ground. The blood even gathered together and flowed on the ground like a small stream. 2 middle-aged men dressed like tycoons were fleeing from the second floor with terrified expressions. They scrambled into the lobby. A young man in a white robe walked down the stairs with a cold smile. He carried a treasured sword and came to the lobby. His white robe was stained with a few streaks of blood. Dark red blood was still dripping from the blade of his sword that shone with a cold light. When Ji Tianqing saw his appearance, he immediately frowned and his face turned cold. Chapter 321. Ji Tianqing had never expected that the murderer who had killed so many innocent people in the restaurant would be Shi Wenyu. He froze at once and stared at Shi Wenyu in disbelief. Shi Wenyu was also stunned when he saw Su Ke appear in the lobby. However, Shi Wenyu only glanced at him before he caught up with the two middle-aged tycoons and pierced their chests with his sword. The two middle-aged tycoons died instantly and their corpses fell to the ground. Their eyes were still wide open and blood kept flowing out of their mouths. In the blink of an eye, two wisps of light golden true core strength flew out of the two corpses and went into Shi Wenyu's body. Shi Wenyu suddenly showed a look of enjoyment and a smile on his face. He stepped over the corpses on the ground and walked toward the door. Ji Tianqing stared at Shi Wenyu's back and shouted, "Shi Wenyu. I didn't expect that as the chief disciple of the Tianjian sect, you would be so cruel and tyrannical and kill innocent people." Shi Wenyu immediately stopped and turned to look at him, his face full of surprise. "Ji Tianqing, are you out of your mind? Can't you see it? This is an illusory world. Everything is fake. As long as you can increase your strength by killing people, who cares if they are good or evil?" Hearing his words, Ji Tianqing frowned and shouted in a low voice, "Greed will only destroy human nature. Shi Wenyu, you are really unscrupulous in order to achieve your goal." Shi Wenyu was stunned for a moment. He looked at Su Ke in a strange way and sneered contemptuously. "Hee, I forgot that this is the first time you have come to the tower. It's ridiculous that I am talking nonsense with an idiot like you." After that, he glanced at Ji Tianqing with disdain, stepped over the door of the restaurant and left quickly. Ji Tianqing stood in the lobby and looked at Shi Wenyu's back. He looked at the dozens of corpses in the lobby and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Of course, he knew that this city was an illusory world. Every blade of grass, every tree, every person, and every object were virtual illusions. However, he could not kill the old, weak, sick, and innocent people just to increase his strength. He could not do it, and he could not do it. The most fundamental reason was that he could not get over the hurdle in his heart and could not blind his conscience. After a moment, when he walked out of the lobby of the restaurant, screams and fighting came from a shop on the street. Shi Wenyu killed all the people in the shop and rushed to the street, killing passers-by and people everywhere. He killed everyone he saw, even the old, women, and children. It was as if in his eyes, those living beings were just grass and dust on the side of the road, insignificant. In a short quarter hour, Shi Wenyu killed hundreds of people. Even though he had slaughtered many old, weak, women, and children, his expression did not change. His eyes flickered with excitement and anticipation. Ji Tianqing couldn't stand it anymore and chased after him to stop him. "Shi Wenyu, stop." He waved the black dragon sword and slashed a dazzling sword light at Shi Wenyu from the side. He did not use his full strength. This sword was just to force Shi Wenyu to retreat. However, Shi Wenyu was already prepared for him. He dodged in a flash and killed a few people along the way. Then he sped up and fled the street, jumping onto the roof of a house. He used his lightness skill and jumped through the connected roofs, escaping to the center of the city. Ji Tianqing followed closely behind him. He also jumped over countless roofs and rushed to the center of the city. In the process of the two rushing to the center of the city, Ji Tianqing saw countless killings and tragedies along the way. Many martial artists with swords and sabers were killing in the city. They burned, looted, and wantonly killed innocent people. Finally, Shi Wenyu rushed to the square in the center of the city and stopped in front of a huge stone statue that was hundreds of meters tall. This pitch-black stone statue was carved of an 8-clawed spider. Its body was as black as ink, and its claws and teeth were abnormally sharp. Its appearance was ferocious and sinister. When he saw the black spider statue, Ji Tianqing immediately remembered the emblems he saw at the entrance of the various shops. He looked up at the black spider statue and frowned. Shi Wenyu stood under the statue and looked at him angrily. He asked in a cold voice, "Ji Tianqing, what do you want? If you want to stop me from passing the trial, then don't blame me for being impolite." Ji Tianqing also retorted, "Shi Wenyu, you are killing innocent people in the city. What does that have to do with you passing the trial?" Shi Wenyu frowned and pointed around the city. He sneered, Ji Tianqing, can't you see that there are killings everywhere in the city? The illusory martial artists in the city are massacring the commoners. This is a hint for us to pass the trial. Only by killing people can we pass the trial. Ji Tianqing. I can't be bothered to talk nonsense with you. Get out of my way. Before Ji Tianqing could speak, the huge spider statue behind Shi Wenyu suddenly shook violently. Kacha! Kacha! As the black spider statue shook violently, dense cracks appeared on the surface of the statue and kept spreading in all directions. Countless tiny stone fragments, mixed with huge pieces of broken stone, rustled down. The 100-meter-tall spider statue was about to collapse. The huge commotion caused the entire square to tremble. When the people in all directions saw this scene, they screamed in horror and fled in all directions in panic. Shi Wenyu was also shocked and immediately turned his head to look behind him. Seeing countless gravel falling from 100 meters in the sky and the entire black spider statue about to collapse, his expression changed drastically. Swoosh! Shi Wenyu took a big step forward and ran to the side. Just as he ran for a dozen steps, countless stone fragments and huge rocks came crashing down from the sky, smashing on the ground and producing loud bangs. Ji Tianqing also quickly retreated, avoiding the countless gravel and retreating to the edge of the square 100 meters away. At the same time, the entire black spider statue collapsed completely, turning into gravel that piled up into a small mountain, causing smoke and dust to fill the sky. A sharp and ear-piercing cry came from the thick smoke and dust. Hiss! The next moment, a black behemoth that was more than 10 meters tall crawled out of the pile of gravel. When Ji Tianqing and Shi Wenyu saw the black monster's appearance clearly, their expressions were grave, and a cold light flashed in their eyes. They saw that the black behemoth was actually a giant spider that was as big as a 3-story building. Its entire body was suffused with a dark cold light, and it had 8 abnormally thick and strong limbs. There were also several rows of dense barbs under its abdomen. The strangest thing was that this giant spider had a huge abdomen and ferocious limbs and sharp claws. Its upper body and head were that of a strange and ferocious woman. Chapter 322. The giant spider stretched out its 8 legs, kicked over countless boulders, and slowly approached Shi Wenyu. Its whole body was surrounded by black gas, and green venom was constantly dripping from its wide-open mouth. Shi Wenyu's face was extremely dignified. He clenched his sword with both hands and kept retreating. After a burst of crashing sounds, the giant spider crawled out of the rubble. It showed a ferocious expression, and its brown eyes surged with cold light. It suddenly sped up and pounced on Shi Wenyu. Shi Wenyu's face immediately changed, and he used his lightness skill to retreat, avoiding the giant spider's attack. Bang bang bang! The giant spider missed its target, and its 8 sharp claws smashed the ground of the square, smashing the ground into pieces and splashing out countless gravel. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Shi Wenyu waved his sword with all his strength, and slashed out dozens of cold sword lights toward the giant spider. The giant spider's body was too big, and it was difficult to dodge. It was immediately hit by the sword lights, and there was a burst of muffled bang 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 sounds. However, the black carapace on the surface of its body was too hard, and its defense was extremely strong. Shi Wenyu's sword light did not break the black carapace, and only left a few white marks on the carapace. The giant spider was enraged. It opened its mouth with a ferocious face, and spat out a dark green venom, sprinkling it on Shi Wenyu. Not only that, it jumped 30 meters away, and pounced on Shi Wenyu from the sky, and it also sprinkled a gray spider web, covering an area of 30 meters. Shi Wenyu was suddenly in a dangerous situation. He desperately waved his sword, and used a powerful sword technique to launch a desperate counterattack. But he was soon drowned by the giant spider's figure, and the sword light that he desperately used was also covered by the smoke and spider web. Bang! 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 Muffled sounds rang out incessantly as the violent energy exploded and spread out in all directions. Shi Wenyu was like a small boat in the stormy sea, appearing and disappearing, and was in danger of being drowned at any time. He had only fought with the giant spider for a dozen moves, and he was blasted out and smashed into the square, creating a huge pit on the ground. He climbed up in a sorry state, and while retreating, he did not forget to roar at Ji Tianqing, Ji Tianqing. What are you waiting for? Come and help me. Ji Tianqing, who was standing at the edge of the square 100 meters away, couldn't help sneering when he saw Tang Wulin's miserable appearance. Help you? On what basis? You slaughtered innocents in the city just now. This is your retribution. Shi Wenyu was so angry that his face turned ashen. He was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. He tried his best to resist the giant spider's onslaught and shouted, Ji Tianqing. If you want to pass this trial, you must join hands with me to kill this giant spider. I can see that it's the trial of the 4th level. Once we kill it, we'll be able to pass. How could Ji Tianqing believe him? It was even more impossible for him to fight alongside him. Hee, since you think that you can pass by killing the big spider, then you should work harder. I want to see if you can pass successfully. Take care of yourself. After saying this, Ji Tianqing turned around and left without hesitation. Hey! Don't go. Shi Wenyu was extremely anxious and shouted at the top of his lungs. However, his voice was quickly drowned out by the loud sounds of fighting. Ji Tianqing quickly left the square and continued to run through the city. His eyes were sharp as he looked around for clues. After a while, when he rushed into a street, he saw a few martial artists holding swords and sabers. They were killing and robbing people in the shops on the street. Outside the shops, there were many corpses on the ground and fresh blood splattered everywhere. Those martial artists were carrying the things that they had robbed. They sneered complacently and talked without restraint. Ji Tianqing rushed up with a gloomy face. Without saying a word, he pulled out the black dragon sword and killed those martial artists. Swoosh! 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 Dozens of dazzling cold sword lights, carrying a cold killing intent, instantly enveloped the few martial artists. Everyone was shocked. They immediately waved their swords and sabers to block and counterattack. However, these people were not Ji Tianqing's match at all. Both sides had only exchanged a few moves before several cultivators were killed. After they were killed, their corpses ignited with golden flames and turned into pure golden true essence, which drilled into Ji Tianqing's body. After the golden true essence merged with Ji Tianqing's own true essence, his strength increased by another level. When Shi Wenyu killed innocent people in the city, the corpses that he killed did not burn. The golden true essence that emerged was very thin. Even if I absorbed it, it would not increase my strength by much. After I killed those brutal martial artists, their corpses would burn and turn into pure true essence, which would allow me to quickly increase my strength. Thinking up to this point, Ji Tianqing understood that his method was the fastest way to increase his strength in an open and above-board manner. Next, he continued to shuttle through the city, looking for clues everywhere. Along the way, he constantly encountered people who were fleeing in panic, as well as brutal martial artists who burned, killed, and looted everywhere. Every time he encountered those inhumane martial artists who killed innocent people, he would not let them go. He would kill them with lightning speed. After those brutal martial artists were killed, their corpses would ignite with golden flames and turn into wisps of golden true essence, which would enter his body. As time passed, half a day passed quickly. Ji Tianqing continuously killed hundreds of brutal martial artists. His strength had greatly increased, and he had finally reached the 6th level of the mystic comprehending realm. At this time, he had just rushed into an old house. Screams of agony could be heard from various rooms in the house. There were several corpses in the courtyard, all of which belonged to servants and maids. Ji Tianqing determined the location of the battle by listening to the sounds. He then rushed into the depths of the house like a gust of wind. In a spacious hall, he saw more than 10 well-dressed people. These people were old and young. They were the third generation of the house owner's family. A few mounted gangsters dressed in black were killing them with their swords. Blood splattered everywhere, and many heads rolled to the ground. In the short span of a few breaths, more than 10 people from 3 generations of the family were killed. Their corpses were piled up on the ground. After the mounted gangsters finished killing, they went around to plunder their belongings. Ji Tianqing finally arrived. He rushed into the hall with a grim expression. He waved the black dragon sword with all his might, causing sword light to fill the sky as he attacked the mounted gangsters. The mounted gangsters immediately surrounded him, roaring and cursing as they launched a counterattack. Both sides fought fiercely in the hall. Soon, they rushed out of the door and moved to the courtyard outside. Ding ding dang dang, the sound of swords clashing could be heard. A violent and devastating wind spread out, turning the entire courtyard into a mess. In the short span of 100 breaths, the mounted gangsters of the mystic comprehending realm were all killed by Ji Tianqing. The corpses ignited with golden flames and turned into pure golden true essence, which entered Ji Tianqing's body. Ji Tianqing put away the black dragon sword. Suddenly, he heard a child crying in the hall. He stopped and hesitated for a moment. Then, he turned around and returned to the hall. Behind the screen in the corner of the hall, he saw a little girl about 6 or 7 years old. She was curled up in the corner with tears all over her face. She was crying so hard that she was out of breath. Ji Tianqing knew that this was an illusory world. Everything was fake. However, when he saw that the whole family had died tragically and only the little girl was left alive, he still felt somewhat depressed. He reached out to wipe away the tears on the little girl's face. He coaxed her gently for a while before she stopped crying. The little girl raised her head and looked at him. Her big clear eyes revealed her innocence. She held an ancient bronze mirror with both hands and handed it to Ji Tianqing. Chapter 323. Hearing the little girl's clear voice, Ji Tianqing noticed the bronze mirror in her hand. Previously, she was curled up in the corner, and even though she was trembling in fear, her hands were still holding this ancient bronze mirror tightly. Ji Tianqing took the bronze mirror and looked at it. He found that this bronze mirror was a little strange. There was a circle of mysterious patterns on the edge of the bronze mirror, and a picture was carved on the back. It was a huge black spider. What was more strange was that when Ji Tianqing held the bronze mirror and looked at it, there was nothing in the mirror. It did not reflect his appearance at all. This discovery made Ji Tianqing frown, and his heart was filled with doubts. This is an illusory world. The sun rises from the west, and even the mirror does not reflect one's figure, he secretly thought for a while, and suddenly a light flashed in his mind. He vaguely guessed something. He threw the bronze mirror on the ground, and with a bang sound, the bronze mirror broke into pieces. Suddenly, the broken bronze mirror lit up with a blazing white true essence brilliance. Swoosh! The dazzling white light immediately condensed into an oval-shaped light door, erected in front of him. The blazing white light door was dark and mysterious, as if it led to another world. Ji Tianqing suddenly smiled and muttered to himself, I see, I guessed right, this is a mirror world. After saying that, he lowered his head and looked at the little girl in the green dress. He smiled and thanked her. The little girl looked up at him, and her pink and cute little face showed an innocent smile. Ji Tianqing stepped into the light door, and his figure disappeared with a swoosh. The next moment, a white light flashed in front of his eyes, and he came to another strange world. Under the 7 stars pagoda, Qiao Xian and the 2 young disciples were still standing in the open space. The 3 of them stood side by side, talking and laughing softly as they looked up at the 4th level of the 7 stars pagoda. 15 minutes is almost up, and the bronze lamp on the 4th level of the pagoda still has not moved. Senior brother Qiao, even if we continue to wait, it will be a waste of time. That's right. It's Ji Tianqing's first time here. He probably doesn't even know the directions in the tower. How could he pass? Qiao Xian revealed a mocking sneer and said in a venomous tone, "Of course I know that little bastard won't be able to pass. If he can pass the 4th level, I can ascend to the 7th level. I just want to see with my own eyes how miserable he looks when he's thrown out of the 7 Stars Pagoda. At that time, I will definitely ruthlessly mock him, making him unable to raise his head again and become the laughingstock of the disciples of the various sects." The 2 young disciples revealed a playful smile and said in a mocking tone, "It seems that kid has offended senior brother Qiao quite a bit. Hee, senior brother Qiao is very fond of Yunyao. This year, Yunyao didn't come, so senior brother Qiao didn't get to see the person he likes. Of course, he's in a bad mood." Just as the 3 of them were chatting, one of the 8 bronze lamps on the 4th floor of the 7 Stars Pagoda lit up. The huge bronze lamp lit up with a bright yellow light, illuminating the dark night. The 3 of them were immediately stunned. They all stared at the bronze lamp and their faces became gloomy. He actually passed. Qiao Xian's face was full of astonishment. Obviously, he couldn't believe this result. The other 2 young disciples hurriedly persuaded him, "Senior brother Qiao, don't worry. It's just 1 lamp. Maybe it's senior brother Wenyu who successfully passed." That's right. Senior apprentice brother Wenyu also started from the 4th level, so he must have passed it. Qiao Xian was silent and waited with a gloomy face. Time passed quietly. Soon, 100 breaths had passed. At this time, the 2nd bronze lamp lit up on the eaves of the 4th floor of the pagoda. The 2nd lamp lit up. That kid and senior brother when you both passed. The 2 young disciples immediately revealed a surprised expression and whispered in disbelief. Qiao Xian's face immediately became extremely ugly. His eyes were surging with a cold light of anger. He growled in a low voice, "How is this possible? That damn bastard, it's his first time here. How could he pass the 4th floor so quickly? A moment ago, he had vowed that if Ji Tianqing could pass the 4th floor, he could ascend to the 7th floor. Now, Ji Tianqing had obviously succeeded in passing the 4th floor. Qiao Xian was slapped in the face by the facts. He was suddenly embarrassed and ashamed. His face turned green and white, and his body trembled with anger. The other 2 young disciples looked at each other and smiled awkwardly. They didn't say anything more. "Forget it, let's not waste any more time. Let's go in quickly. Senior brother Qiao, will go first." The 2 young disciples said goodbye and quickly entered the gate of the 1st floor of the 7 Stars Pagoda. They started to break through. Qiao Xian was left alone in the open space. He cursed a few times with a face full of anger. Then he quickly entered the 7 Stars Pagoda and started to break through from the 1st floor. Ji Tianqing was walking in a vast and desolate mountain range. He held the black dragon sword in his hand and looked around vigilantly. He was surrounded by endless dark brown mountains. The mountains rose and fell, connecting to the end of the sky. The mountains were bare. There were dark brown rocks and hard soil everywhere. As far as the eye could see, the hundreds of miles of mountains were dark gray. There was no greenery at all. Ji Tianqing was walking on top of a mountain range that was thousands of feet high. His figure was like a gust of wind as he flipped over one rock pile after another. Suddenly, he jumped over a huge rock that was as big as a palace and stopped. On the hard dark brown ground, there was a huge and terrifying footprint. He squatted next to the footprint and carefully observed it. He found that the huge footprint with a radius of 2 meters was sunken more than half a meter deep. The sole of the footprint was fan-shaped. There were a total of 4 thick toes. At first glance, it was obvious that it was left by some kind of giant beast. He continued to walk forward. After walking for 20 meters, he found the same footprint. He frowned and pondered for a moment. Immediately, he analyzed a shocking result. The size of this beast must be huge. It can actually cross 20 meters in one step. It can actually make a half-meter deep hole in the ground that is as hard as a rock. Its weight must be shocking. Looking at the fresh footprint, it must have been left today. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing's face became serious. His sharp eyes searched around. Although he had just entered the world of the 5th floor, he was not sure what kind of small world it was. But his intuition told him that this desolate and quiet world must be very dangerous. At this moment, 2 huge heads suddenly popped out from a pile of rocks 100 meters behind him. The 2 dark brown heads were as big as a water tank. They were sharp like crocodiles. Chapter 324. Hiss, 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 2 gigantic 5-meter-long dark brown behemoths slowly crawled out from the rocks. They looked like crocodiles, with their sturdy limbs stepping on the ground, leaving footprints the size of washbasins on the ground. They crawled forward slowly and silently, not making the slightest sound. When they were about 100 meters away from Ji Tianqing, they suddenly sped up and rushed toward Ji Tianqing like arrows leaving the bowstring. Whoosh! The 2 black behemoths were like 2 black afterimages, streaking across the sky as fast as lightning, and instantly rushed behind Ji Tianqing. Their sturdy limbs suddenly bounced and jumped more than 5 meters high, pouncing toward Ji Tianqing from the sky. At the same time, Ji Tianqing had already sensed that something was wrong, and quickly turned around. When he saw the appearance of the 2 black behemoths, he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and a look of surprise flashed in his eyes. Are these crocodiles, or geckos? They're lizards. Ji Tianqing clearly saw that the 2 black behemoths' sharp mouths didn't have 2 rows of sharp fangs like crocodiles, but a long dark red tongue. The tongue was full of barbs, and the tip of the tongue was forked into 2 halves, like 2 long spears. He was immediately sure that the 2 dark brown behemoths were not crocodiles, but lizards. Oh my God, how can lizards grow to such a huge size? Ji Tianqing was full of shock, and quickly took out the black dragon sword to counterattack. However, something even stranger happened. The black dragon sword also became incomparably huge, and was much taller than his body. He hugged the black dragon sword with both hands, as if he was hugging a door plank, and looked very awkward and strange. Bang, bang, bang. Ji Tianqing slashed out a few sword lights with all his strength, but they were all smashed by the 2 giant lizards, and collapsed on the spot. The violent qi exploded, and he was forced to take 10 steps back, almost falling into the rocks. The 2 giant lizards missed their target, but they immediately bounced up and pounced on him again. Ji Tianqing hurriedly used shadowless steps to retreat and dodge. He desperately brandished the black dragon sword, slashing out sword lights that blotted out the sky and covered the earth as he fought with the 2 large lizards. At the same time, he used his spiritual sense to ask, "Little black dragon, what's wrong with you? Why did the black dragon sword become so huge?" The little black dragon was silent for a moment before replying in a low, muffled voice, "Old Ji, it's not me who's become bigger, it's you who's become smaller." What? Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment, and his expression became extremely strange. He awkwardly dodged the attacks of the 2 large lizards and hurriedly retreated more than 10 meters away, hiding behind a towering pile of rocks. He lowered his head to check the condition of his body and found that his body and limbs had indeed shrunk by many times. At this moment, he was only half a meter tall and looked like a 4 or 5-year-old child. Damn it! How did it become like this? The tiny lizard became a giant beast, and I became a tiny human. What kind of world was this? Why is it so strange? Earlier, he had been walking alone on the mountain peak and had nothing to refer to, so he had not noticed the changes in his body. Now, with the little black dragon's reminder, he realized that he had become a tiny human and appeared especially weak. His mood was somewhat complicated, and his brow was furrowed in deep worry. At this moment, the 2 large lizards leaped over the pile of rocks and pounced down from above. To Ji Tianqing's shock, the two large lizards opened their mouths and spat out tensome dark red flames that covered the sky and poured down in torrents. They had clearly been enraged. Dark red flames surged out of their bodies and burst forth with an astonishingly powerful qi. Great Fei at the origin core stage. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned in shock. He had never imagined that the two large lizards would have condensed a Yao core and possessed strength comparable to origin core stage experts. At this critical moment, he had no time to think. He circulated his true essence with all his might and stimulated the strength of his left arm. In an instant, his entire left arm became as red as lava, and scarlet true fire surged out of his palm. He viciously slammed his palm toward the two large lizards, unleashing a gigantic flaming palm with a radius of 10 meters. Bang! With a dull thud, the two large lizards were sent flying by the flaming palm. They crashed into the rocks in the distance, black smoke rising from their bodies. He had to deal with two origin core stage Fei, so the black dragon sword was of no use. Thus, the black dragon sword transformed into the little black dragon with a whoosh. Qian Yu also flew out of the 100 treasures brocade pouch and revealed its true form. The two of them wanted to join forces with Ji Tianqing to deal with the two large lizards. However, an inconceivable scene occurred. After the little black dragon revealed its true form, it was only a meter long. It did not look like a dragon at all, but more like a tiny black snake. Qian Yu's body was also pitifully small. It was less than a meter long and looked like an ice blue puppy. Ah! How did I become so small? How can this be? This king has become a tiny little thing. The little black dragon and Qian Yu both cried out in alarm, unable to accept this result. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing vaguely understood. The world of the 5th level is very special. Outsiders like us will become tiny and insignificant. The creatures and beasts in this world, on the other hand, will become enormous and powerful. Let's not worry about that for now. Let's kill those two large lizards first. Ji Tianqing immediately led the little black dragon and Qian Yu toward the two large lizards, using all his strength to attack. Thousand Feather Blade. He released 9 dark golden sword rays, which carried an unparalleled sharpness as they shot toward the two large lizards. The 9 sword rays attacked the two large lizards from different angles and directions. They were unbelievably fast, and golden sword images filled the sky. The two large lizards were already injured and had no way of dodging the sword rays. They were immediately enveloped by the golden sword images. Bang! 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 With a string of thuds, the 9 sword rays struck the two large lizards, causing blood to flow from their eyes, mouths, and other vital points. The little black dragon and Qian Yu hurriedly launched their own attacks, unleashing ice arrows and blades of light to kill the two large lizards. The two gigantic lizards hissed and screamed in pain. They desperately released dark red flames and threw out balls of fiery light, launching a counterattack. The two sides began to fight on the mountain peak. They fought until the sky was dark and the earth was dark. The earth was constantly trembling, and the sky was filled with gravel and dust. After 15 minutes, Ji Tianqing, the little black dragon, and Qian Yu had used all their strength to finally kill the two large lizards. The massive lizard corpses had been riddled with holes and shattered into several pieces, scattering across the rocks and large pits. Ji Tianqing stared at the corpses of the two large lizards, trying to figure out what was going on. The little black dragon and Qian Yu rummaged through the corpses of the two large lizards, and it wasn't long before they found 2 fist-sized dark red pills. These 2 dark red pills were imbued with boundless energy. They were the Yao cores of the two large lizards. Chapter 325. Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown as he watched the little black dragon and Qian Yu happily devour the Yao cores. The two of you are in such a hurry to devour the Yao cores. Aren't you afraid that something will go wrong? He was well aware that this was the 5th level of the 7 Stars Pagoda, a strange world where size was reversed. Things that were small would become huge, and things that were large would become small. Such a strange and bizarre world could very well be another illusory world. Since it was an illusion, then it was very likely that there was something wrong with those two origin core stage lizards. He couldn't help but worry that if the little black dragon and Qianyu hastily devoured the Yao cores, what would happen if something bad happened? Qianyu hurriedly explained, "Old Ji, don't worry. There won't be any problems. Although this world is very strange, those two lizards and their Yao cores are real. For me and the little black dragon, refining the Yao cores of other great monsters will allow us to quickly recover our strength. It is much more effective than consuming spirit pills or spirit fruits." Ji Tianqing nodded and said nothing more. He silently observed the reactions of the little black dragon and Qianyu. It didn't take long before he discovered that the little black dragon and Qianyu had recovered some of their strength. Their bodies had also grown larger. Seeing that they did not have any abnormal reactions, he relaxed and continued on his journey with the little black dragon and Qianyu. After descending a large mountain, Ji Tianqing discovered several small dark red trees in a cave at the base of the mountain. The air in the cave was scorching hot and brimming with fire energy. Those small dark red trees were covered in dark red fruits that looked like red dates. Ji Tianqing stared at the fruit trees for a few moments before recognizing them as vermilion fruits, a precious spirit fruit. He hurriedly plucked the vermilion fruits from the trees and stuffed 2 of them into his mouth. The rest were stored in his space ring. The little black dragon and Qianyu silently refined the energy of the Yao cores, no longer having much interest in the vermilion fruits. Ji Tianqing consumed 2 vermilion fruits, and his strength was greatly replenished and enhanced. He borrowed the surging energy from the vermilion fruits to constantly temper the apertures in his sword vein, silently increasing his strength. Then, he was surprised to find that his body was also gradually growing bigger, and his size was slowly recovering. This lifted his spirits and gave him a better understanding of this strange and unknown world. He continued onward with the little black dragon and Qianyu, ascending another mountain. On this desolate rocky mountain, he encountered a giant silver-gray wolf that was more than 30 meters long and as tall as a 3-story building. This demon wolf was naturally a greater demon that had condensed a demon core. Its strength was comparable to a first-level origin core stage expert, and its strength was even stronger than the 2 large lizards from before. Ji Tianqing observed for a moment and understood that the huge footprints he saw before were made by this demon wolf. On the rocky mountain peak, they were discovered by the demon wolves. There was nowhere to hide, and it was impossible for them to escape. As a result, he, the little black dragon, and Qianyu could only fight back with all their might. He used the ultimate skill of the flying star sword technique and released a powerful sword ray to fight with the demon wolf. The little black dragon and Qianyu assisted in the attack from the side, constantly releasing various blades of light to attack the demon wolf's vital points. Both sides fought fiercely, causing the mountain peak to shake violently. Dust and gravel burst into the air, and a raging hurricane blew up. This battle lasted for an entire 15 minutes before it came to an end. The demon wolf had been blinded in one eye, and its body was covered in crisscrossing wounds. Many of the wounds were so deep that bones could be seen, and blood constantly gushed out. Ji Tianqing, the little black dragon, and Qianyu were all heavily injured, and their strength was greatly depleted. They looked exhausted and in a very sorry state. Seeing that the demon wolf was about to turn and flee into a cave halfway up the mountain, Ji Tianqing and the 2 pets hurriedly gave chase. They chased to the cave halfway up the mountain. Just as the demon wolf was about to enter the cave, Ji Tianqing used the scarlet true fire in his left hand and struck out a huge flaming palm with all his strength. Boom! The huge flaming palm that blotted out the sky smashed the demon wolf to the ground, and half of the cave collapsed. The demon wolf was as black as charcoal, and its body was twisted out of shape. It was already on the verge of death. Ji Tianqing and the 2 pets besieged the demon wolf for a while longer, and then killed it completely. After the death of the demon wolf, the little black dragon and Qian Yu dug out a silver demon core the size of a washbasin from its body. Not only was the demon core huge in appearance, but it also contained the demon wolf's decades of cultivation, which was surging with power. Both the little black dragon and Qian Yu were overjoyed. They excitedly swallowed the demon core and digested the energy contained within. As the demon core's energy was absorbed, the two pets became stronger and stronger, and their bodies gradually grew larger. In the next few hours, Ji Tianqing led the little black dragon and Qian Yu over one mountain after another, killing wild beasts along the way. The wild beasts came in all shapes and sizes. There were mosquitoes that were as tall as a person, giant ants that were 2 meters long, poisonous scorpions that were more than 3 meters long, and giant pythons that were more than a dozen meters long. All kinds of small insects and beasts had grown into giant beasts, and all of them had condensed demon cores. This was an eye-opener for Ji Tianqing. He gave the demon cores to the two pets so that they could quickly recover their strength. As for the spirit fruits, apart from eating a portion of them, he put the rest into his interspatial ring. About 8 hours later, he had killed a total of 9 origin core realm wild beasts and obtained more than 30 spirit fruits. By then, he had successfully refined the 5th acupoint of the 6th sword vein. He was not far from reaching the 7th level of the ethereal realm. His body also returned to its normal size, returning to its original appearance. The little black dragon and Qian Yu had swallowed several demon cores. Their strength had been greatly improved, and their bodies had also returned to their normal size. Finally, Ji Tianqing did not have to trek through the mountains on foot. He carried the black dragon sword on his back and rode Qian Yu into the sky. He flew at an altitude of 1,000 meters, and his journey was uneventful. Even if he encountered many large wild beasts along the way, they could not attack him. About 2 hours later, he was flying over a mountain range. Suddenly, he saw a tiny white figure on top of the mountain, fighting with a huge demonic beast. He hurriedly told Qian Yu to stop and slowly landed on the mountain peak. Not long after, the white figure finally killed the giant wild beast. However, he was also in a sorry state. He sat on the ground, exhausted, and panted heavily. Ji Tianqing landed on the mountain peak and saw that the white figure was Shi Wenyu. At the moment, Shi Wenyu was only half a meter tall, and his body was like that of a 4 or 5-year-old boy. His white robe was full of holes and bloodstains, and his body was covered in cuts and bruises. His long hair was also disheveled, and he looked very miserable. Ji Tianqing walked up to him and looked at him indifferently. "I didn't expect that you would also pass the 4th level and come here." Seeing that his body was normal and uninjured, Shi Wenyu shouted angrily, "Ji Tianqing! You cowardly bastard! If you had joined forces with me, we would have already killed that damned spider and passed the 4th level." "I wouldn't have been so heavily injured." Ji Tianqing frowned and sneered, "Shi Wenyu, you and I are enemies, not friends. Why should I fight alongside you? Moreover, in the 4th level, there were clearly open and honorable ways to pass it. But you chose the path of brutality and used slaughter to solve the problem. You only have yourself to blame for being injured like this and ending up in such a sorry state. You deserve it." Shi Wenyu was heavily injured and in a sorry state. He was already in a bad mood. Chapter 326. Shi Wenyu was filled with rage as he glared at Ji Tianqing, his entire body surging with cold killing intent. However, he suppressed the anger in his heart and gritted his teeth without saying anything. He cursed in his heart, "Ji Tianqing, you damned bastard. Right now, I'm covered in injuries and my strength has dropped greatly in the 7 Stars Pagoda. I won't bicker with a bastard like you. After leaving the 7 Stars Pagoda, I'll definitely make you kneel and beg for mercy." Shi Wenyu bore this grudge in his heart and glared fiercely at Ji Tianqing before turning to walk down the mountain. Ji Tianqing could not be bothered with him anymore. He rode on Qian Yu and flew into the sky, continuing to fly forward. Before he entered the Seven Stars Pagoda, Yunya had imparted her experience to him. If he wanted to successfully pass the 5th level, he had to find the end of the world and the portal to the next level. At that time, Ji Tianqing thought that it did not sound difficult. Only now did he understand that it was extremely dangerous and as difficult as ascending to the heavens. After entering the 5th level, humans would become extremely small and insignificant and would have to face countless demon beasts that were as large as mountains. In a situation where one could not fly, if a small person wanted to find the end of the world, they would have to travel through the mountains on foot. Who knew how long that would take? Furthermore, while trekking through the mountains, they would have to fight against Origin Core Realm demons. It was simply too difficult. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing did not hide or run after encountering those demons. He fought side by side with his 2 pets and killed several demons. His strength was constantly increasing and his size had returned to normal. Now that he could fly in the air on Qianyu, his chances of passing the level had increased by many times. After all, flying in the air was much faster than walking. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these 2 days, Qianyu and the little black dragon took turns to fly. The 2 of them flew for more than 3,000 kilometers in total and even stopped to rest a few times in between. Although Ji Tianqing had yet to find the end of the world, his strength and that of his 2 pets were still increasing steadily. He continued to search unhurriedly. Every 6 to 8 hours, he would let Qianyu and the little black dragon take turns to rest. Late at night on the 5th day, he finally arrived at the end of the world. It was a towering mountain that was more than 10,000 meters tall. Behind the mountain was endless darkness with nothing in sight. The 10,000-meter-tall mountain was a lone peak. The mountain walls were so steep that they were almost perfectly straight. Half of the mountain was covered by the sea of clouds. Ji Tianqing controlled Qianyu and continued to fly up into the sky. Looking down from the sky, the mountains looked like a dozen cows and sheep scattered in the vast grassland. In addition to the mountains, there was also a lake in the grassland. It was like a mirror, sparkling under the sunlight. Although the scenery was beautiful, Ji Tianqing was not in the mood to appreciate it. His heart was full of thoughts about finding the formation. Unknowingly, a whole day passed. Qianyu and the little black dragon took turns to carry him, flying for a total of 2,000 to 3,000 miles. He saw the landscape within 1,000 miles, but still could not find a single formation. In his view, the scenery within 1,000 miles was pleasant grassland and mountains. It was completely primitive. Where was the shadow of a formation? But Yun Yao would not lie to him. He had to find and crack the most wonderful formation to see the passage to the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda. Ji Tianqing had no choice but to continue searching. His sharp eyes observed, not letting go of any clues. Another 2 days passed quickly. Ji Tianqing searched for 2 days. He observed several dozen mountains and even went into the lake, but he still could not find the formation. At noon, he rode Qianyu high in the sky. His eyes were blurred as he looked forward, silently thinking. The most wonderful formation, just what kind of formation is it? He had been thinking about this question for 2 days. Suddenly, an idea flashed through his mind, and an unbelievable idea popped up in his mind. His body suddenly shook, and his eyes shone with a bright light. He looked up at the scorching sun in the sky and then looked down at the grassland and mountains below. He immediately saw some clues. Under the light of the noon sun, the grassland within 1,000 miles looked like a blue formation plate. The several dozen mountains and 2 lakes scattered across the grassland were like the network and foundation of the formation plate. Ji Tianqing was suddenly enlightened. He murmured in astonishment, "No wonder I couldn't find a single formation even after searching for 1,000 miles. So the grassland, mountains, lakes, and sky and sun in 1,000 miles are the formation of this world. With the sky and earth as the foundation, the mountains and lakes as the network, such a naturally formed formation is the most wonderful formation. So that's how it is." It is truly extraordinary and unimaginable. Ji Tianqing opened his eyes. Looking across the world, he finally saw the wonderful formation. This caused him to feel excited and enlightened, and it was extremely beneficial and helpful to his cultivation in the Tao of formations. Chapter 327. Using heaven and earth as an array was almost a godlike method. It was as difficult as ascending to heaven to crack such a divine array and find the entrance to the top of the 7 stars pagoda. If one did not have high attainments in array formations, broad vision, and great wisdom, it was absolutely impossible to see through it. It was also because of this that among the disciples of the various sects, except for Yun Yao, no one could pass the 6th level and reach the top of the 7 stars pagoda. Ji Tianqing understood this point, but he was not worried or flinched. His array attainments were comparable to that of an array grandmaster, and his experience and insight were extremely high. It was just that his strength had not reached the origin core realm. Qian Yu flew in the sky for a day and took him to 1,000 miles radius. In this way, the grasslands and earth within 1,000 miles radius, dozens of mountains, and 2 lakes were clearly imprinted in his mind. The scene of heaven and earth within 1,000 miles radius shrank into a picture scroll in his mind, like an array diagram. He sat cross-legged on a mountain peak, closed his eyes, and silently observed this array diagram, deducing and calculating a way to crack it. Time passed, and the stars moved. Soon, another 2 days had passed. He deduced the array diagram in his mind thousands of times, and after repeated predictions and calculations, he finally found a way to crack it. This array formed by heaven and earth has a total of 49 mountains, and there is a lake on the east and west sides. Not only does this formation contain the techniques of the 9 palaces, it also contains the profundities of the Big Dipper, and it even contains the secrets of the 4 symbols divine dragons. The 2 lakes are the finishing touches that allow the entire grand formation to come to life. If that's the case, then I'll try the 7 stars reverse, 6 directions, and 3 mountains divide the 4 seas to crack the array. Maybe it will work. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing rode Qian Yu into the sky and flew toward the southwest. 4 hours later, he came to a mountain peak that was thousands of feet tall and began to use his array formation skills to set up an array. He spent an entire day to set up a top-grade profound-grade formation that covered the entire mountain peak. The array absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth from all directions and gathered a majestic and mighty power, secretly changing the array pattern of the mountain peak. A few hours later, an incomparably magical scene appeared. This towering mountain, which was thousands of feet tall and covered an area of 50 miles, actually began to move slowly. The 10,000 feet tall mountain rumbled across the grassland, moving 100 meters to the east before it stopped. Although the mountain had only moved 100 meters, this distance was insignificant compared to the size of the mountain. However, a mountain that was thousands of meters tall was actually moved 100 meters away. How terrifying was the power required to do that? Not to mention a Tongxian realm martial artist, even a Yuan Dan realm martial artist would not be able to do it. Only by using an array and borrowing the invisible power of heaven and earth could such a magnificent feat be accomplished. Ji Tianqing revealed a gratified smile when he saw that the mountain had moved 100 meters. Then, he rode Qian Yu up into the sky and looked down at the ground, observing the movements of the surrounding mountains. I've already reverse-engineered the heaven and earth great formation. The movement of the Earth Palace's mountain peak will trigger a change in the entire great formation. Next, there should be some changes to the peak of the Tianqian position. As he spoke, he looked expectantly towards the northeast, towards a mountain peak 100 miles away. As expected, the mountain that was thousands of feet tall also began to tremble and shake, emitting an earth-shattering rumble as it slowly moved. After 100 breaths of time, the mountain moved 100 meters away and stopped moving. Ji Tianqing looked towards the southeast and muttered in a low voice, "Next, the peak of the Taiyuan position should be moving." His words were like a divine edict, as if he could mobilize the power of heaven and earth and move the 3 mountains and 5 peaks. As soon as he finished speaking, the huge mountain 100 miles to the southeast also began to rumble and move. In the next few hours, the 40 over mountains within 1,000 miles were all pushed by the power of the heaven and earth great formation and moved 100 meters away on the grassland. In the end, even the two pearl-like lakes magically shifted their positions. Ji Tianqing used the power of the formation to move a mountain, but it caused a chain reaction in the entire heaven and earth great formation, causing every mountain and lake to move. Such a miraculous scene caused Qian Yu and the little black dragon to exclaim in amazement, and they admired Ji Tianqing greatly. Compared to the vast expanse of heaven and earth, Ji Tianqing was as insignificant as a speck of dust. But he used the formation to borrow the invisible and mysterious power of heaven and earth to change the layout of this world. The vast expanse of heaven and earth in front of him was like a game of chess, allowing him to command and move as he wished. Such a method was like that of a god. After a few hours, it was already late at night, and the changes in the heaven and earth great formation finally stopped. In the center of the grassland, between two towering mountains, a dazzling white light suddenly lit up the night sky. The dazzling white light condensed into a huge hole in the sky. The hole was like a whirlpool, and it was pitch black inside, making it impossible to see anything clearly. But Ji Tianqing knew that this whirlpool-like hole was the passage to the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda. A gratified smile appeared in his eyes, and he rode Qian Yu toward the hole of white light. Whoosh! The white light flashed, and his figure was swallowed up. A moment later, the whirlpool of white light suddenly disappeared, and the night sky became pitch black again, as if nothing had ever appeared. Ji Tianqing also passed through the spatial passage and arrived at the 7th level of the 7 Stars Pagoda. Whoosh! In a flash of light, Ji Tianqing's figure appeared out of thin air, and he landed on a round plate paved with black boulders. The round plate had a radius of 10 miles, and it was paved with countless ancient black stone slabs, and there were deep ravines carved into the ground. The countless ravines formed a dense network of lines and veined patterns, interweaving into a mysterious and massive diagram. Ji Tianqing could tell at a glance that the black stone plate beneath his feet was the formation plate of a large formation. The formation plate was surrounded by a sea of white clouds, and the sea of clouds was vast and boundless, as if there was no end to it. Ji Tianqing walked to the edge of the formation plate and looked into the sea of clouds, but he could not see what was under the sea of clouds. He looked up at the sky and saw a vast starry sky above him. The dark starry sky was dotted with tens of thousands of stars, forming a mysterious and vast galaxy array. Countless stars were shining with silver starlight, and they sprinkled on the black formation plate, causing the veined patterns and patterns on the formation plate to flicker with blurry starlight. So, this is the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda. Just as senior sister said, this is the place closest to the starry sky. What a magnificent sight of the sea of clouds and the starry sky. Ji Tianqing looked up at the tranquil starry sky, and his eyes were fixed on a pale red star in the northeast, and he revealed a gratified smile as he murmured in a low voice. Cuckoo, I've finally reached the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda. I see it, that huge and dazzling star is the red pole star. Chapter 328. Ji Tianqing retracted his gaze from the starry sky and looked down at the disk array beneath his feet. Countless palm-wide ravines were carved on the black stone floor. They shone with a faint silver light, as if there were stars flowing within. He stepped across the ravines and walked towards the center of the disk array. In the center of the disk array was a huge engraving. It looked like a blooming lotus with 9 petals. Ji Tianqing knew that this was the 9-grade Lotus Platform Array Dao. It was a wondrous array above the heavenly prime level. Before he met Ba Xia, he had always thought that the heavenly prime level was the limit of a martial artist. However, after Ba Xia imparted the formation Dao to him, he realized that there were even more wondrous formations above the heavenly origin formation. It was the same for martial arts. There were even more mysterious and unbelievable levels above the heavenly prime level. Of course, the array Dao and martial arts realms above the heavenly prime level were too far away from him. He didn't know much about it. He only had some guesses. The stamen of the 9-grade lotus platform array was the center of the disc array. It was also the core of the 7 stars pagoda. There was a diamond-shaped silver crystal embedded in the stamen. It was as big as a fist, and it was translucent and sparkled with a bright silver light. As he got closer, Ji Tianqing could clearly feel that the silver crystal contained the power and aura of heaven and earth. It was like the moon in the sky. He knew that the enormous disc array beneath his feet was the legendary 7 stars array. The 7 stars array was the core of the 7 stars pagoda. Not only did it have wondrous effects, but it was also the source of power that supported the entire 7 stars pagoda. This 7 stars formation had absorbed the power of the stars in the sky for many years and contained an incomparably majestic power of the stars. That was the reason why there were glistening silver lights flowing in the patterns and lines of the formation disk that were as dense as spider webs. And the silver crystal in the stamen was the core of the 7 stars array. It was of utmost importance. After observing for a while, Ji Tianqing used a secret technique and took out the jade soul coffin. Swoosh! Golden light surged in his palm and a thumb-sized jade box appeared. Through the translucent white jade, he could see a finger-sized girl lying in the jade box. It was the unconscious Ji Ku. He held the jade soul coffin with both hands and carefully placed it in the stamen. He then placed the jade soul coffin on the fist-sized silver crystal. The silver crystal reacted immediately, releasing a vast amount of star energy into the jade soul coffin. The jade soul coffin absorbed the violent star energy and shone with a dazzling light. After refining the star energy, it transferred it into Ji Ku's body. Ji Tianqing couldn't see the changes in Ji Ku's body. However, he could tell that after the jade soul coffin had transferred the pure astral energy into her body, her condition had stabilized, and her breathing had become more stable and peaceful. Ji Tianqing sat on the 9 lotus throne pattern and stared intently at the jade soul coffin for a long time. Seeing that Ji Ku's condition had stabilized and there were no abnormal reactions, he was relieved. Then, he waved his hands and released rays of true essence to start the array. He wanted to set up a small tranquility array and seal the jade soul coffin in the stamen so that it could absorb the energy of the silver crystal for a long time. If he were somewhere else, he would only need an hour to set up a small tranquility array. However, under his feet was the 7 stars array and the jade soul coffin was placed in the center of the 9 lotus thrones. The tranquility array he set up had to be compatible with the 7 stars array and the 9 lotus thrones in order to be effective. This made it more difficult for him to set up the array at least 10 times. Fortunately, he was an array grandmaster, which was why he could complete such a difficult task. If he were an ordinary ethereal enlightenment master, he would never be able to do it. Time passed silently. The vast starry sky and the stars in the sky seemed to be eternally unchanging. A day passed quickly. Ji Tianqing continued to release true essence from his palms and created rays of golden light, which consumed a lot of his true essence. At this time, he had used up 80% of his true essence and was extremely tired. Not only was his face pale, but his forehead was also sweating. Fortunately, he finally finished setting up the tranquility array and successfully placed the jade soul coffin. He slowly retracted his hands and let out a long breath. Phew! It's finally done. He looked down at the stamen and saw a palm-sized golden light shield protecting the jade soul coffin. He could not help but feel relieved. He looked through the golden light shield and stared at the small jade soul coffin. He whispered, "Cuckoo, you can sleep here peacefully. When you wake up, the power of the Big Dipper's star will have strengthened your red star bloodline to an extremely powerful level. When that time comes, not only will you be able to refine the foreign race's power sealed in your soul, but your strength will also increase by leaps and bounds." Ji Tianqing's voice became weaker and weaker as he muttered to himself. He quickly sat cross-legged and closed his eyes. He silently cultivated to recover his true essence and stamina. In order to place the Jade Soul Coffin and set up the small Tranquility Array, he had used up almost all of his energy and was extremely weak. At this time, he did not consume any elixirs or spirit fruits. With the help of the 7 Stars Array and the Silver Crystal, he could quickly recover his strength. As he cultivated, the Silver Crystal also released strands of silver light that flowed into his body. The silver light was the power of the stars. It was of a higher grade and purer than the spirit energy of heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing continued to refine the power of the stars. While recovering his strength, he could also use the power of the stars to refine his acupoints. 3 days passed unknowingly. After 3 days and 3 nights of cultivation, he had absorbed a huge amount of power of the stars. His strength had finally recovered to its peak. Moreover, he had also used the power of the stars to refine 3 acupoints. The 8 acupoints in the 6th sword vein had all been refined. Ji Tianqing had finally broken through the 6th level of the Mystic Enlightening stage and reached the 7th level of the Mystic Enlightening stage. However, at this time, a white light suddenly flashed in the silent 7 Stars Array. Swoosh! After the white light dissipated, a figure in a white robe appeared on the black array plate out of thin air. This person was Shi Wenyu. His white robe was tattered and stained with blood and dust. His long hair was also tangled in a mess. He looked like a beggar with disheveled hair and a dirty face. However, he was exuding an arrogant aura. Standing on the black array plate, he looked up at the dark starry sky and laughed proudly. Ha ha ha. Without Yun Yao, I, Shi Wenyu, am the top genius. So what if the heaven and earth array is formed? With my knowledge and wisdom, I have only failed twice. I can break it on the 3rd try. Chapter 329. Before this, Shi Wenyu had been challenging the 7 Stars Pagoda for 5 consecutive years. In the first 3 years, he stopped at the 5th level and couldn't even enter the 6th level. Until 2 years ago, he finally broke through the 5th level, but he couldn't find the exit in the 6th level. After 2 years of research and pondering, he finally understood the mystery of the array on the 6th level. Because of this, he came to the 7 Stars Pagoda this time with full confidence. He was determined to reach the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda. Humph! To be able to see through such a marvelous heaven and earth great formation and successfully break it, other than Yun Yao, only I can do it. As for Ji Tianqing, that bastard, he must still be in the 5th level, fighting with the demonic beasts. Ha ha ha. Shi Wenyu laughed proudly. When he thought that Ji Tianqing was most likely still in the 5th level, his heart was full of pride and a sense of victory. But at this moment, he suddenly glanced out of the corner of his eye. In the middle of the black disk, there was a figure in a white robe sitting cross-legged. His face suddenly changed, revealing a look of disbelief. Someone reached the 7th level before me. How is this possible? Shi Wenyu growled and quickly ran to the middle of the array. When he came to the middle of the array, he saw that the white-robed man sitting in the middle of the array was Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing looked calm, and his body was covered with a layer of faint starlight. Obviously, he had been cultivating here for a long time. When he saw this scene, Shi Wenyu's expression became extremely unsightly, and dense embarrassment, shame, and indignation gushed out from his heart. He couldn't believe that Ji Tianqing had reached the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda before him. Just now, he was full of pride, thinking that he was the first genius after Yun Yao. In the end, the truth was like a silent slap on his face, making him blush with shame. He couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing is cultivating. I am far away from him. He shouldn't have heard me, Shi Wenyu comforted himself, and the embarrassment in his heart was relieved. At the same time, Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. When he saw Shi Wenyu in front of him, he couldn't help but frown, revealing a mocking expression. Ha, I didn't think that a fellow like you would actually be able to make it to the 7th floor. Although you're a few days late. Shi Wenyu was already full of shame and anger, and when he heard Ji Tianqing's contemptuous and teasing words, his face immediately turned red. His eyes were filled with anger as he glared fiercely at Ji Tianqing and shouted coldly, "Ji Tianqing, don't be so arrogant. So what if you reached the 7th floor before me? That's only because you're lucky and you have a pet to help you. When it comes to real skills, you may not be my match." Ji Tianqing cast a sidelong glance at him. His expression was still indifferent as he said with a faint smile, "Is that so? Then why are you in such a sorry state, like a beggar? Is this a popular way of dressing up in the Tianjian sect? You." Shi Wenyu gnashed his teeth in anger. His blood was surging in his chest and abdomen, and he almost spat out blood. If Ji Tianqing had shouted out in anger, maybe Shi Wenyu wouldn't have been so angry. However, Ji Tianqing's demeanor was very indifferent. He always had a condescending attitude, looking down at people with cold eyes. Shi Wenyu's self-esteem and pride had been trampled on by Ji Tianqing time and time again, which had accumulated a great deal of anger in his heart. However, Shi Wenyu didn't act on impulse. He forced himself to suppress his anger. Ji Tianqing has been cultivating here for a long time. He has been conserving his energy and keeping his strength at the peak state. I have just reached the 7th floor. My injuries haven't healed and my strength hasn't recovered. If I were to fight him now, I would be at a disadvantage. Shi Wenyu analyzed silently. He decided to endure for a while and teach Ji Tianqing a lesson when he recovered his strength. Thinking of this, he glared at Ji Tianqing and shouted in a deep voice, "Ji Tianqing. The 7 Stars Pagoda is a dangerous place. Those who can reach the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda are all top geniuses. I won't bicker with you today for the time being. Wait until next year's Stars List tournament and I'll defeat you in front of everyone on the star platform. Let's see what qualifications you have to be arrogant then." Ji Tianqing, of course, could see through his thoughts and couldn't help but sneer contemptuously. "Since you're so confident, Shi Wenyu, why wait until next year's Stars List tournament? I see that this place is spacious and suitable for a fight. Why don't you make your move now and let me see how you're going to defeat me?" He mercilessly exposed Shi Wenyu, causing Shi Wenyu's face to turn ashen and full of anger. "Ji Tianqing. You're courting death." Shi Wenyu roared and rushed towards Ji Tianqing as fast as a gust of wind. He punched out 2 basin-sized fist lights and fiercely smashed towards Ji Tianqing's head. Ji Tianqing immediately counterattacked. A strong fighting intent burst out from his body and he also punched Shi Wenyu with his fists. Bam! The fists of the 2 men fiercely collided with each other, causing a loud dull sound and a violent burst of energy. Ji Tianqing stood motionless and didn't even take half a step back. Shi Wenyu's body was shaken and he staggered back 5 steps and almost fell to the ground. He was injured and his strength had not recovered yet. He was not Ji Tianqing's opponent at all. He shouted with shame and anger, "Ji Tianqing. You've gone too far. Do you dare to give me a day? I'll be able to defeat you easily after I've recovered my strength." He wanted to goad Ji Tianqing into action to stall for time. But he didn't expect that Ji Tianqing didn't fall for it at all. Ji Tianqing curled his lips and sneered disdainfully, "Don't make a fool of yourself in front of me with such a low-level provocation. I came here first, so this area is mine. If you want to heal and cultivate, then get the hell out of here. Otherwise, I don't mind throwing you out of the 7 Stars Pagoda." Shi Wenyu was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. He clenched his fists and his whole body was trembling. In the past few years, which genius disciple of the younger generation didn't greet him with a smile and respect? Who dared to scold and insult him to his face? When had he ever been insulted like this? Ji Tianqing. Just you wait. I'll remember this grudge. Shi Wenyu's face was ferocious. He stared at Ji Tianqing with resentment and roared in a hoarse voice. Ji Tianqing didn't expect that Shi Wenyu could still swallow his anger at this point. He was a little surprised and thought to himself, this Shi Wenyu is really good at enduring. He's obviously a scheming person. Since Shi Wenyu had admitted defeat, he couldn't be bothered with him anymore. He sat cross-legged on the ground and continued to cultivate with the help of the silver crystal. Shi Wenyu glared at him fiercely and turned to leave. He wanted to go to the edge of the 7 Stars Pagoda array to heal his injuries. However, he suddenly saw the silver crystal and the small jade soul coffin in front of Ji Tianqing. He raised his eyebrows and greed flashed in his eyes. That shining silver crystal is located in the center of the 7 Stars Pagoda array. It should be the soul crystal that Master mentioned. What's that jade box? Ji Tianqing seems to care a lot about it. Shi Wenyu stared at the soul crystal and the jade soul coffin and thought to himself, the 7 Stars Pagoda is only open for 1 day. 1 day in the outside world is half a month in the pagoda. At most, in 5 days, Ji Tianqing and I will be sent out of the 7 Stars Pagoda. He has been guarding the soul crystal. How can I do it? No, I have to heal my injuries as soon as possible. After I recover my strength, I'll think of a way to take the soul crystal. Chapter 330. The top of the 7 Stars Pagoda finally regained its tranquility. Shi Wenyu sat on the ground, took out a few healing elixirs and consumed them. He circulated his energy to heal his injuries and silently restored his strength. Ji Tianqing sat in the middle of the 7 Stars array, closed his eyes and circulated his energy to refine his acupoints with the help of the stars. Both of them did not want to waste any time, so they concentrated on cultivating and improving their strength. Before Ji Tianqing came to the 7 Stars Pagoda, Yunyao told him that the 7 Stars Pagoda would only be open for a day. The flow of time in the pagoda was different from that in the ancient realm of the stars. A day in the ancient realm was half a month in the pagoda. He calculated the time and found that the 7 Stars Pagoda would send him out in 5 days at most. In these 5 days, he wanted to use the mysterious and powerful stars to improve his strength as much as possible. After all, cultivating here for 5 days was equivalent to cultivating outside for 2 months. If he missed this opportunity, he would have to wait for another year. Time passed quickly and a day passed quickly. After a day and night of cultivation, Shi Wenyu's injuries had basically healed and his strength had recovered by 90%. He ended his cultivation and quietly turned his head to look at Ji Tianqing in the middle of the array. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was still cultivating with his eyes closed, a cold light flashed in his eyes. Then, he silently stood up and walked toward Ji Tianqing. He stopped behind Ji Tianqing and observed the soul crystal and the jade soul coffin. Soon, he found the tranquility array set up by Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku, who was sleeping in the jade soul coffin. Ji Tianqing, that bastard. No wonder he was guarding the soul crystal. It turns out that he brought someone in. Does he want to use the 7 Stars array and the soul crystal to heal that girl? Shi Wenyu frowned, anger surging in his eyes. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was still cultivating and did not seem to notice his approach, a thought appeared in his mind. In order to obtain the soul crystals, I have to first destroy the tranquility array set up by Ji Tianqing. Once I try to break the formation, he'll definitely wake up and stop me. No, I have to get rid of him first. Therefore, Shi Wenyu quietly walked behind Ji Tianqing. He circulated the true essence in his body and gathered all the power he had accumulated in his right hand. Then, he fiercely slapped the back of Ji Tianqing's head. He wanted to knock out Ji Tianqing with a single palm strike and then throw him into the sea of clouds. As a result, Ji Tianqing would fall out of the 7 Stars Pagoda and no one would be able to stop him. His right palm, which was glowing with dazzling flames, was about to hit Ji Tianqing's head. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing, who was cultivating, suddenly opened his eyes. Without turning his head, he raised his left hand and sent a backhand slap towards Shi Wenyu. His left arm turned red, and the red flame true fire gushed out of his palm, condensing into a fiery palm the size of a basin. Bang! The two fiery palms collided fiercely and exploded with a muffled sound, bursting into flames all over the sky. Ji Tianqing sat in the same place without moving, but Shi Wenyu was forced to take 3 big steps back before he was able to neutralize the violent impact. He suddenly widened his eyes, and his face was filled with disbelief. I've already recovered 90% of my strength, and I took advantage of his cultivation to launch a sneak attack. How could I still be pushed back by him? At the same time, Ji Tianqing stood up and turned to look at Shi Wenyu. He shouted in a cold voice, Shi Wenyu. I gave you a chance to cultivate here, but you shamelessly sneak attacked me. You're digging your own grave. Ji Tianqing shouted angrily. He instantly pulled out the black dragon sword and slashed at Shi Wenyu with all his strength. At that moment, the black dragon sword turned into a huge cold sword light, revealing the shadow of a divine dragon. Roar! A deafening dragon roar rang out, spreading throughout the entire 7 stars great array. The golden divine dragon shadow, with the power to split the sky and earth, instantly drowned Shi Wenyu. Shi Wenyu had no time to dodge and could only pull out his sword to block. Bang! With a loud bang, he was sent flying by the divine dragon sword light. He spat out blood and flew more than 10 meters away, smashing hard on the black stone ground. Cough, cough. Shi Wenyu coughed violently and blood flowed out of his nose and mouth. He looked more and more embarrassed. He struggled to get up, holding a green sword in his hand. He glared at Ji Tianqing and shouted, Ji Tianqing. You damned bastard! How dare you draw your sword at me? Do you want to fight me to the death? Ji Tianqing coldly shouted with an indifferent face, you sneak attacked me when I was cultivating. Such a despicable and vicious act. It's only right for me to kill you. Shi Wenyu refused to admit it and cursed angrily, bullshit. You were the one who broke the rules first. I just came closer to check the situation. You violated the rules set by the 8 sects and brought others into the 7 stars pagoda. You even placed them in the 7 stars array. What are your intentions? Of course, Ji Tianqing could not explain to him about Ji Ku. He shouted angrily, Shi Wenyu, cut the crap. Show me your full strength. Let me see where your arrogance lies. As soon as his voice fell, Ji Tianqing's figure flashed and pounced on Shi Wenyu. He waved his sword and sword light filled the sky. Shi Wenyu also waved his sword and fought back. He displayed his exquisite swordsmanship and dozens of huge sword lights shot out like a rain of arrows. Bang, bang, bang. The sword lights from both sides collided fiercely and burst out a series of muffled sounds, stirring up a violent hurricane. The sword lights that filled the sky collapsed and turned into countless sword light fragments, scattering in all directions. In just 20 breaths, the two of them had exchanged more than a dozen moves and clashed head-on several times. Ji Tianqing originally thought that he could easily defeat Shi Wenyu with his strength at LV7 Tongxian realm. However, Shi Wenyu was the chief disciple of the Tianjian sect after all. His swordsmanship cultivation was exquisite. After exchanging more than a dozen moves, neither of them gained the upper hand and the fight ended in a draw. Ji Tianqing immediately put away his black dragon sword and displayed the flying star swordsmanship. He activated the sword embryo in his body and released 2 huge golden sword lights. They attacked Shi Wenyu from both sides. Gale Thunder Strike. The 2 3-meter-long golden sword lights exploded with a dazzling golden light. Mixed with the violent hurricane, it was like a huge golden thunderbolt that struck Shi Wenyu on the spot. With a loud bang, Shi Wenyu was sent flying. His face was covered in blood as he fell 10 meters away. He gritted his teeth and endured his injuries. He struggled to get up and wanted to use his swordsmanship to fight back. At this moment, Ji Tianqing released another huge flaming sword light and attacked him. Crimson Dragon Flash. The 5-meter-long flaming sword light was like a flaming divine dragon that instantly engulfed Shi Wenyu's figure. Boom! Chapter 331. Shi Wenyu was lying on the ground, covered in blood. He was seriously injured. He struggled to get up. His whole body was trembling, and he had to lean on his sword to stand firm. In addition to anger, there was also shock and disbelief in his heart. He didn't expect that he would still be easily crushed by Ji Tianqing even after he had recovered 90% of his strength. The two had only exchanged a few moves, but he was seriously injured by Ji Tianqing. He couldn't believe or accept this result. Shi Wenyu felt a chill run down his spine when he saw Ji Tianqing walking toward him with a murderous aura emanating from his body. He glared at Ji Tianqing and roared in a hoarse voice, "Ji Tianqing! What do you want to do? Do you dare to kill me? This is the 7 Stars Pagoda, a place jointly controlled by the 8 sects. The 8 sects have long stipulated that the disciples of each sect are not allowed to kill each other. If you dare to kill me, my Tianjian sect will use this as an excuse to suppress your sky-bearing sect. At that time, your sky-bearing sect will become the target of public criticism. You, Ji Tianqing, will also be a sinner who has brought disaster to your sky-bearing sect." Obviously, Shi Wenyu was afraid, so he deliberately said these words to threaten Ji Tianqing. Before entering the 7 Stars Pagoda, he didn't put Ji Tianqing in his eyes and didn't understand Ji Tianqing's nature. He couldn't help but worry. Ji Tianqing looked murderous. If he really wanted to kill him, what should he do? Ji Tianqing still walked towards him with large strides. He stared at him indifferently and said in a contemptuous tone, "Shi Wenyu, don't use the tiger's skin as a banner. You're just greedy for life and afraid of death. Since you're so cowardly and afraid of death, where did you get the courage to sneak attack me? Where did your arrogance and pride go?" Shi Wenyu was ashamed and angry, but he couldn't flare up. He could only swallow his anger and say, "Ji Tianqing, don't be too greedy. Even though I've offended you, you've already injured me to this extent. We're even now." As he spoke, he kept backing away, staring at Ji Tianqing warily. In fact, his heart was filled with grief, indignation, and rage. He was madly cursing Ji Tianqing to die. He had long since made up his mind that as long as he could get through this difficult situation, he would definitely think of a way to kill Ji Tianqing and cut Ji Tianqing into pieces. Ji Tianqing approached step by step with a sneer on his face. He said in a mocking tone, "Are we even now? Shi Wenyu, you're lying to me. At this moment, you must be thinking of killing me, right? You don't have to swallow your anger, and you don't have to bear the humiliation and plot revenge in the future. Come on. Didn't you want to kill me? A great opportunity is right in front of you. Make your move." Shi Wenyu clenched his teeth. He could neither defend himself nor put down his dignity to beg Ji Tianqing for mercy. He kept backing away and soon retreated to the edge of the 7 stars array. 10 meters behind him was a vast sea of white clouds. At this moment, Ji Tianqing bellowed in a contemptuous tone, "Shi Wenyu, you have ulterior motives. I can't let you stay here. Today, I'll give you an unforgettable lesson. If you're lucky enough to survive, then consider yourself lucky." After that, he turned into a golden shadow and rushed toward Shi Wenyu as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, he rushed in front of Shi Wenyu. He raised his left hand and condensed a huge flaming palm with the red flame true fire. He slammed it toward Shi Wenyu's chest. Shi Wenyu was shocked and subconsciously put his sword in front of his chest to block Ji Tianqing's palm. Bang! In a dull loud noise, Shi Wenyu was sent flying by the giant flaming palm on the spot. He flew backward without any resistance, drawing an arc in the air before tumbling and landing in the vast sea of clouds more than 10 meters away. Ah! Shi Wenyu's figure was drowned in the sea of clouds, but his mournful screams still echoed in the air. It was early in the morning. In the open space under the 7 Stars Pagoda, the mountain wind whistled and the morning dew was heavy. It had been 16 hours since the 7 Stars Pagoda opened. 5 young disciples stood in the open space. They stood in groups of 2 or 3 and whispered to each other. These 5 young disciples had already entered the 7 Stars Pagoda. However, they failed to pass the 4th and 5th levels and were ejected from the 7 Stars Pagoda in advance. Even so, everyone did not feel embarrassed. They had long been accustomed to it. Everyone whispered to each other and looked up at the 7 Stars Pagoda, waiting for the results. As of now, there were still 3 disciples in the 7 Stars Pagoda. There was a bronze lamp on the 6th level of the 7 Stars Pagoda, and 2 bronze lamps on the 7th level. This undoubtedly meant that one of the 3 disciples stayed on the 6th level, and 2 of them had reached the 7th level. Xiao Xian, True Martial Sect, and Wind Fire Sect's chief disciples stood together. They looked up at the 7th level of the 7 Stars Pagoda and whispered to each other. Yunyao didn't come this year, but there are still 2 people who can reach the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda. It's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. The 3 people who haven't come out yet are senior brother Wenyu, Feng Min, and Ji Tianxing. I wonder who the 2 people who reached the 7th level are. In my opinion, the first person to reach the 7th level must be senior brother Wenyu. As for the second person, it should be Feng Min, yes. It's already a miracle that Ji Tianxing could pass the 4th and 5th level. How could he reach the 7th level? Hehe, senior brother Wenyu is still the best. He was full of confidence before he came to the pagoda. Now, he really reached the 7th level. Xiao Xian said with a face full of smiles, I dare to bet that in less than 2 hours, Ji Tianxing will be ejected. Just thinking about the sorry state he'll be in when he falls from the 6th floor fills me with anticipation. The other 2 young disciples nodded in agreement, and said with a smile of exultation, yes. When he is ejected from the 7 Stars Pagoda for the first time, he will definitely not use the power of the array to reduce the impact of the fall. When the time comes, he will fall from a few hundred meters high and will be seriously injured. If he's unlucky, he might fall to his death on the spot, and even lose his life. Xiao Xian grinned and revealed a sinister sneer. It will be great if he dies on the spot. At this moment, a young disciple next to him suddenly exclaimed. Look! Someone has been ejected. Hearing this sudden cry of surprise, the disciples in the open space all looked up at the sky. Amidst the white clouds, a white figure was falling down at lightning speed. Although this person was constantly waving his palms to release true core brilliance to hit the Tianyuan array that enveloped the 7 Stars Pagoda, trying to reduce the impact of the fall with the help of the array. However, the speed of his fall was too fast to reduce the impact of the fall. After 3 breaths, the white-robed figure fell from the sky and hit the ground hard. Boom! Chapter 332. Following the loud noise, the ground shook violently several times, and smoke and dust flew up into the sky. Seeing this scene, the few disciples widened their eyes and let out a low cry. Oh my God! Falling from 1,000 meters high, even if he doesn't die, he'll be crippled. So miserable. I wonder who this unlucky guy is. This guy seems to have fallen from the sea of clouds. Could it be that he fell from the 7th level? Impossible. If he entered the 7th level, he would only be sent out when the time is up. How could he be ejected in advance? Look, there are 2 bronze lamps on the 7th level. One of them is out. Suddenly hearing a disciple's exclamation, everyone looked up at the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda. He saw that one of the 2 copper lamps that were originally lit had indeed gone out. Seeing this scene, Xiao Xian and the few disciples turned pale with fright. Their expressions became extremely interesting. That person's figure doesn't look like a woman. It shouldn't be Feng Min. Since it's not Feng Min, then it's very likely to be Ji Tianxing or senior brother Wenyu. It must be Ji Tianxing. In a few words, the few disciples guessed the identity of the person who fell miserably. Xiao Xian frowned and cursed in a low voice, "Ji Tianqing, this bastard. He actually reached the 7th level." The other 2 disciples quickly followed up and asked puzzledly, "Then why did he fall again? Could it be that he slipped and fell? He, is there a need to guess? He must have been thrown down by senior brother Wenyu. Let's go and take a look." "Ha ha ha, let's go, I want to see if Ji Tianqing, that bastard, fell to his death." Xiao Xian and the 2 young disciples not only did not have the slightest bit of sympathy, but also looked like they were gloating. Everyone rushed to the edge of the array and poked their heads to look inside the array. They saw that the grassland under the 7 Stars Pagoda was still covered in dust and smoke. The ground was smashed into a huge pit with a radius of 5 meters. A young man in a white robe was lying in the deep pit. This person's white robe was tattered and full of holes and blood stains, almost turning into a gray robe. His long hair was also tangled together, making him look like a chicken coop. This person's figure was tall and robust, yet his appearance was in a sorry state. He was sloppy like a beggar, and it was simply unbearable to look at. He lay in the deep pit and twitched. Another pool of blood flowed out from his body and dyed the ground red. He struggled a few times before he struggled to get up and raised his blood-stained head. Seeing this, Xiao Xian and the other young disciples were dumbfounded. "You are actually senior brother Wenyu? How is this possible? Senior brother Wenyu, how did you fall down? How could this be? Why wasn't Ji Tianqing the one who fell? What the hell is going on?" "Senior apprentice brother Wenyu, you clearly ascended to the 7th level, how did you fall down?" Everyone was stunned. Their hearts were filled with shock and confusion. They had no idea what was going on. Xiao Xian's mood was the most complicated. His face was gloomy and his eyes were surging with anger. Last night, he vowed to the others that Ji Tianqing would never be able to ascend to the 7th level. He would definitely be ejected and fall miserably. But the truth was the exact opposite. Ji Tianqing did not appear, but Shi Wenyu fell down. Seeing Shi Wenyu's miserable appearance, he felt a chill down his spine and his heart was secretly alarmed and fearful. He could not imagine what Ji Tianqing had done to Shi Wenyu. At this time, Shi Wenyu staggered out of the pit. He did not care about the blood stains on his face and the mud on his body. He looked up at the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda and roared hysterically, "Ji Tianqing! Just you wait. I will remember this. One day, I will make you pay back 10 times. These 2 short sentences contained endless anger and killing intent. It seemed that it had exhausted all of Shi Wenyu's strength. He staggered to the edge of the array, stepped through the transmission light door, and returned to the open space under the pagoda. Several disciples quickly gathered around him. They were full of shock and curiosity as they asked him what had happened. But Shi Wenyu's injuries were extremely serious. His whole body had turned into a blurry blood man and his consciousness was on the verge of fainting. He did not care about the crowd's questions. He staggered out of the open space and went down the mountain alone. After such a thing happened, he was in such a miserable state. He did not have the face to stay under the pagoda, let alone talk to the crowd. Xiao Xian and several young disciples looked at Shi Wenyu's figure in the distance. They all showed extremely complicated expressions and whispered to each other. How could this be? It seems that Shi Wenyu was defeated by Ji Tianqing. It's incredible. Ji Tianqing came to the 7 Stars Pagoda for the first time. He actually ascended to the 7th level and defeated Shi Wenyu. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I would never believe that this was true. Isn't it too incredible? It seems that we have all underestimated Ji Tianqing. Shi Wenyu was severely injured. It shows that Ji Tianqing's strength must be very terrifying. Several disciples were discussing animatedly. Only Xiao Xian did not say a word. His face was as gloomy as ice. Time passed quietly. Unknowingly, 2 hours had passed. At this time, the copper lamp on the 6th level of the 7 Stars Pagoda suddenly went out. A graceful white figure floated down from the sky. Her body was light and graceful. She constantly waved her palms to hit the Tianyuan array with true essence brilliance. With a muffled bang 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 sound, she used the rebound force to reduce the impact of the fall. A moment later, she floated to the ground and walked out of the transmission light door. This beautiful woman with picturesque features and dignified elegance was Feng Min. Although she failed to ascend to the 7th level and was ejected from the 7 Stars Pagoda, she was not injured. However, she was not injured at all, and her posture was not disheveled. Instead, she seemed to be floating in the air. Several young disciples greeted her and looked up at the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda. Now, there was only one copper lamp left on the entire 7 Stars Pagoda that was still lit. Everyone was wondering how Ji Tianqing was so powerful that he could reach the top of the pagoda on his first attempt. What kind of gains would he obtain at the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda? At the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda, the starry sky was still bright. Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged in the center of the array. He used the power of the soul crystal to cultivate and strengthen his strength. His body was covered in a layer of faint starlight. His temperament became deep and peaceful, as if he had merged with the vast starry sky. In the stamen of the lotus platform in front of him, the soul crystal emitted a rich starlight that enveloped the entire jade soul coffin. Ji Ku, who was sleeping in the coffin, was also wrapped in a layer of silver starlight. His aura was calm and peaceful, and his bloodline power was constantly strengthening. Time passed silently. 2 days, 3 days. 5 days passed quickly. When the time was almost up, Ji Tianqing felt something in his heart. He finally ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. He opened his mouth slightly and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. A wisp of silver qi flowed out of his mouth, emitting bits of starlight. The power of the stars is indeed the most mysterious and powerful force in the world. Its effects are extraordinary. I only cultivated in the 7 Stars array for 5 days, and I used the power of the stars to continuously temper 6 acupuncture points. Sigh. If I can continue cultivating here for a few more days, I can break through to level 8 Tongxian stage in one go. When he thought of this, he felt a little regretful. He lowered his head to look at Ji Ku, who was sleeping in the jade soul coffin, and whispered, "Ku, the time is up. I have to leave now." Chapter 333. Ji Tianqing sat next to the jade soul coffin and looked at Ji Ku gently without saying a word. After about a quarter of an hour, the 7 Stars great array suddenly lit up with a ray of starlight that wrapped around his entire body. Swoosh! With a flash of dazzling starlight, Ji Tianqing disappeared into thin air and was sent out of the 7 Stars Pagoda. This was the rule of the 7 Stars Pagoda. When the time limit was up, the challenger would be sent out. Ji Ku slept in the jade soul coffin and was placed in the 7 Stars array, so he would not be sent out by the pagoda. In the next moment, Ji Tianqing's figure left the 7 Stars Pagoda and appeared in the open space below the pagoda. Swoosh! He stood on the platform with an indifferent expression and calmly looked at the several young disciples not far away. It was evening now, exactly 24 hours after the 7 Stars Pagoda opened yesterday. The faint golden light of the setting sun shone on his body, causing his figure to be dyed with a layer of hazy gold. He actually had the aura of an otherworldly expert. The young disciples were whispering when they saw Ji Tianqing suddenly appear. They all quieted down and looked at him in unison. Everyone was the chief disciples of their respective sects, so their strength and vision were not bad. They could see at a glance that Ji Tianqing was stronger than a day ago, and his aura was more mysterious and restrained. His change was very obvious. Not only did his strength increase, but even his temperament had changed. In the past, his aura was like a treasure sword, but the sharp blade was hidden in the scabbard and did not show its edge. Now, His aura was like the vast and deep starry sky. It was mysterious and tranquil, but it was unfathomable and unfathomable. Feng Min and Wu Yu came up to him and cupped their fists in greeting. They smiled and said, "Junior Marshal Brother Ji, congratulations. I didn't expect Junior Brother Ji to reach the top of the 7 Stars Pagoda on his first try. It's really incredible. It's like a miracle." Ji Tianqing cupped his fists at the two of them and nodded slightly. He didn't say anything. Humble himself. He did not need to show off proudly. This was not in his nature. Feng Min and Wu Yu both understood his temperament, so they didn't say anything more. After saying their goodbyes, they turned and left. The other Pill Cauldron sect disciple also came to bid farewell to Ji Tianqing before leaving the 7 Stars Pagoda. In the blink of an eye, there were only 4 people left in the open space. They were Ji Tianqing, Xiao Xian, and the other 2. Xiao Xian and the 2 young disciples walked up to Ji Tianqing and said coldly, "Ji Tianqing, you actually knocked Shi Wenyu down from the 7 Stars Pagoda. The Tianjian sect will remember this. In a few days, we'll meet again. Let's see how you're going to deal with this then." The other 2 young disciples also said with a gloomy expression, "When the disciples of the various sects challenge the 7 Stars Pagoda, even if there is some friction between them, they will never fight to the death. Ji Tianqing, you're so arrogant that you've angered the Tianjian sect and violated the rules set by the 8 sects." Ji Tianqing looked indifferently at Xiao Xian and the other 2. He frowned and said coldly, "So, you want to stand up for Shi Wenyu?" The 2 young disciples' expressions changed and they quickly explained, "Although we're on good terms with Shi Wenyu, we can't stand up for him. Of course, he has to solve his own grievances with you. We don't mean to stand up for him. We're just warning you, Ji Tianqing, to behave yourself in the future. Don't provoke public anger and become everyone's common enemy." Ji Tianqing looked at them calmly and said coldly, "Since you 2 don't dare to stand up for Shi Wenyu, why are you still shouting in front of me?" The 2 young disciples' expressions suddenly stiffened. They were embarrassed and angry. "You, Ji Tianqing. Very good. You're crazy." The 2 of them stared coldly at Ji Tianqing, then took 2 steps back and didn't say anything more. Only Xiao Xian was left standing. Ji Tianqing's gaze fell on him again. He said jokingly, "Xiao Xian, it's said that you and Shi Wenyu are close, like brothers. Shi Wenyu asked for it and ended up in such a miserable state. As a brother, aren't you going to seek justice for him?" His tone was a little playful, but his eyes were as sharp as a sword. Xiao Xian's heart tightened and he was secretly on guard. "Ji Tianqing. Don't be arrogant. I just said that when we meet again in a few days, I'll teach you a lesson." "In a few days?" Ji Tianqing frowned, not understanding what he meant. But he didn't ask and said jokingly, "If you want to avenge Shi Wenyu so much, why wait a few days? Now is a good time. You can try." Ji Tianqing's tone was very indifferent, and he looked down on Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian had long hated and resented him. Now that he was being ridiculed, he was so angry that his face turned white and he gritted his teeth. For a moment, he had an impulse to draw his sword and slash at Ji Tianqing to teach him a lesson. But the 2 disciples of the True Martial sect and Wind Fire sect hurriedly reached out and pressed on his shoulder, giving him a look. The 2 of them used their spiritual sense to persuade Xiao Xian, "Junior brother Qiao, don't be rash. Ji Tianqing is deliberately provoking you to attack. He wants to take the opportunity to teach you a lesson. Senior brother Qiao, even Shi Wenyu is no match for Ji Tianqing. It's even more impossible for us to beat him. Let's bear with it for a while." Xiao Xian only calmed down after hearing the 2's advice. He glared at Ji Tianqing with hatred in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "Ji Tianqing. I'm a magnanimous person and won't bicker with a bastard like you." Before he could finish, Ji Tianqing sneered, "Ha, you want to bicker with me, but do you have the guts? You! Xiao Xian's lungs almost exploded from anger. His entire face turned the color of pig liver, and his eyes were about to spit fire. In his life, he had never been so aggrieved as he was today. Being ridiculed and insulted to his face, he could only swallow his anger and did not even have the courage to attack. He was so angry that he panted rapidly. He twisted his shoulders to break free from the two young disciples' hands and rushed toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing! You've gone too far. Xiao Xian's blood boiled with anger. He rushed toward Ji Tianqing without a care in the world. He raised his palms and slapped out dozens of huge palm shadows. Each palm shadow was the size of a wash basin and was formed by sharp metal elemental true essence. It contained a powerful force that could split open stones. Although his strength was not as good as Shi Wenyu's, he was also at level 8 Tongxian realm. This raging waves palm technique had also been tempered thousands of times, and its power was extremely ferocious. Ji Tianqing looked at the dozens of golden palm shadows coming toward him. He raised his left hand calmly and slapped out a huge flame palm the size of a millstone. Bam bam bam. The terrifying power of the giant flaming palm instantly shattered more than a dozen golden palm shadows. Xiao Xian had just sensed that something was wrong. His eyes were filled with shock, but it was too late for him to dodge. With a muffled bam, he was sent flying by the flame palm and landed on the ground 10 meters away. His white robe was scorched by the true flame fire, and his long hair was charred and curled. He looked like he had crawled out of a coal pit and was in a sorry state. Moreover, his internal organs were injured by the terrifying power of the flame palm. He struggled to get up, but he covered his mouth and coughed. Blood flowed out of his mouth. He felt the injuries on his body and was shocked and angry. However, he did not dare to attack Ji Tianqing again. Seeing this, the two disciples from the true martial arts sect and the Windfire sect looked terrible and sighed in their hearts. Ji Tianqing's strength has reached such a terrifying level. Xiao Xian can't even take one hit from him. Chapter 334. Silence reigned in the field. Ji Tianqing stood calmly in the open space with his hands behind his back. His entire body emitted a confident and powerful aura. The disciples of the true martial sect and Windfire sect looked at Ji Tianqing with fear, not daring to say anything. Xiao Xian coughed a few times and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He glared at Ji Tianqing with a ferocious expression and shouted in a venomous tone, "Ji Tianqing! You win! The Thousand Autumns sect will remember this. Don't be smug. One day, I'll make you kneel at my feet and beg for mercy." Hearing this, the two young disciples' expressions changed and they turned their heads away, unable to bear to look at Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian, are you stupid? You've just been injured by Ji Tianqing and now you're saying such harsh words. Other than being humiliated by him again, what's the point? The two of them thought at the same time. They both thought that Xiao Xian had lost his mind in anger and had lost his sense of reason and propriety. Sure enough, Ji Tianqing looked at Xiao Xian with cold eyes, and a mocking sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Ha, you and Shi Wenyu are indeed brothers in distress. Both of you only know how to spout harsh words. Since you're so powerful, I'd like to see what right you have to make me beg for mercy." As soon as he finished speaking, he used the shadowless step. His body turned into a golden afterimage and rushed toward Xiao Xian as fast as lightning. He didn't draw his sword. Instead, he raised his left palm and slapped it toward Xiao Xian with a giant flaming palm. With his strength, he didn't need to use the Black Dragon sword to deal with a martial artist in the 8th stage of Mystic Enlightening Realm. Xiao Xian saw the giant flaming palm coming toward him and was instantly shocked. He retreated in fear. The two disciples from the true martial sect and the Windfire sect hurriedly pincer attacked Ji Tianqing, blocking his attacks. "Ji Tianqing! Don't be presumptuous. You're too aggressive. Back off." In their opinion, no matter how strong Ji Tianqing was, he couldn't beat the two of them together. After all, Ji Tianqing was not Yun Yao. No matter how strong he was, there was a limit to his strength. But the two of them did not expect that Ji Tianqing did not retreat or avoid, but instead sped up and rushed towards Qiao Xian. Shua! His speed was extremely fast, and his body also turned into a golden stream of light, instantly passing between the two of them. The two of them were stunned on the spot. Their palms almost hit each other. At the same time, Ji Tianqing rushed in front of Qiao Xian and hit him with his left palm. Qiao Xian's figure was engulfed by the red flame true fire. He immediately let out a painful scream and was blasted to the ground. After the giant flaming palm dissipated, the two young disciples saw his appearance clearly. His entire body was charred black and smoking as he lay on the ground. His black robe had already been burned to ashes, and blood was flowing out of his mouth and nose. His injuries were even more severe. A 3-meter-wide crater appeared on the ground paved with black slabs, and more than a dozen cracks appeared around it. Qiao Xian suffered such a heavy blow and lost the ability to fight on the spot. He no longer had the courage to fight Ji Tianqing. He clenched his teeth and suppressed the anger and humiliation in his heart. He silently got up and walked down the mountain without looking back. When he reached the edge of the open space, he turned back and glared at Ji Tianqing, his eyes full of hatred and resentment. He buried this hatred in the bottom of his heart and swore silently in his heart that today's hatred would be repaid 100-fold. He would use Ji Tianqing's life and blood to wash away the shame. Seeing Qiao Xian leave silently, the two young disciples also left quickly, lest Ji Tianqing come to settle the score with them. In the blink of an eye, the three of them left quickly, their figures disappearing into the forest in the distance. Ji Tianqing looked at the backs of the three people leaving and did not chase after them to kill them. The reason he did so was to teach Qiao Xian a lesson and make him obediently tuck his tail between his legs. He had long known that Qiao Xian hated him very much and had secretly slandered and cursed him many times. Previously, he was busy with the 7 Stars Pagoda and only wanted to settle Ji Ku down as soon as possible. He was too lazy to waste time on Qiao Xian. Now that the matter was over, Qiao Xian did not know what was good for him and came to threaten him. Of course, he would not let Qiao Xian off. Ji Tianqing's concept was that if people did not offend him, he would not offend them. If people offended him, he would definitely offend them. After a while, the sun set behind the mountain. The world was dark and night was about to fall. Ji Tianqing also summoned Xian Yu and rode it out of the 7 Stars Pagoda, returning to the sky-bearing sect. 12 hours passed and it was already the next morning. Xian Yu carried Ji Tianqing across 2,000 miles and returned to the sky-bearing sect. After Ji Tianqing returned to the Tianqing courtyard, he entered the secret chamber to cultivate. Previously, in the 7 Stars Pagoda, not only did he obtain a large number of spirit fruits, but he also cultivated in the 7 Stars array for 5 days. In just 5 days, he had absorbed a large amount of star power from the soul crystals and stored it in his body. He had not completely refined and absorbed it yet. He wanted to continue cultivating for 2 more days to completely refine the star power and further improve his strength. Xian Yu and the little black dragon were also sleeping in the 100 treasures brocade pouch, silently digesting the power of the monster cores and the star power they had absorbed. It was peaceful for 2 days. On the morning of the 3rd day, a beautiful woman in white came to the Tianqing courtyard. It was Yun Yao. Maid Xiao Shuang knew that she had a close relationship with Ji Tianqing, so she led her into the courtyard and waited in the living room. Maid Xiao Shuang went to the secret chamber and knocked on the door to report the news to Ji Tianqing. When Ji Tianqing learned that Yun Yao had come to visit, he quickly ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. After entering the living room, he smiled and cupped his hands to greet Yun Yao. "Eldest senior sister, are you looking for me?" Yun Yao nodded slightly and asked in a gentle voice, "Did your trip to the 7 Stars Pagoda go smoothly?" "Yes, It went quite smoothly. Thank you for your advice, eldest senior sister. Ji Tianqing nodded and thanked her. Then, he took out the token to enter the 7 Stars Pagoda and handed it to Yun Yao. Eldest senior sister, here's the token. It's returned to its rightful owner. Yun Yao did not accept it. She gently shook her head and said, take the token. I may not go to the 7 Stars Pagoda in the future. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment, then nodded and took back the token. Yun Yao said seriously, I came to find you on Master's orders. Master has something important to tell us. Master has orders. What is it? Ji Tianqing asked. Yun Yao walked out of the living room first and said, let's go to the sky-raising palace first. Master is waiting for us. Ji Tianqing quickly followed her footsteps and rushed to Qishao Peak together. Half an hour later, the two climbed up Qishao Peak together and entered the sky-raising palace. Ji Tianqing saw at a glance that there were only 2 people in the hall. One of them was Chu Tiansheng, who was sitting on the sect master's throne, and the other was Yan, When Chu Tiansheng saw that all 3 disciples had arrived, he said with a solemn expression, all 3 of you are here. Master has something to announce today. In 5 days, it will be the 200th birthday of the Tianjian sect's master. A few days ago, the Tianjian sect sent out invitations to various guests. Master also received an invitation, but Master doesn't plan to go to the Tianjian sect. Chapter 335. Hearing Chu Tianqing's words, Ji Tianqing suddenly understood. He suddenly understood why Qiao Xian said that they would meet again in a few days under the 7 Stars Pagoda. At that time, he didn't understand what was going on, but now he knew that it was the birthday of the Tianjian sect's master. For such a big event, the several sects that had a good relationship with the Tianjian sect must have known about it long ago and would definitely go to the birthday celebration. The Sky-bearing sect, the Xinyue sect, and the 6 Unity sect had no friendship with the Tianjian sect and even had some grudges and conflicts. However, for the sake of face, the sects would also send people to the Tianjian sect to congratulate them. Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and Yan, immediately cupped their hands and bowed to show that they had obeyed. Chu Tiansheng nodded slightly and said earnestly, recently, the Tianjian sect has been quiet on the surface, but in fact, they have been moving frequently in the dark. Their ambitions have already been revealed. The 3 of you go to the Tianjian sect. You must act according to the circumstances. If you have the opportunity, try your best to find out the details of the Tianjian sect and see what plans and conspiracies they have. Master has already prepared the birthday gift. You should prepare it in the next few days. You will set off in 4 days. After that, he gave a few more words of advice and gave some other instructions. Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and Yun Yao bowed together to show that they would not disappoint him, and then they left. After leaving the sky-bearing palace, Ji Tianqing walked side by side with Yan, and asked him how he was doing. Yan, didn't hide anything and quickly replied, Senior brother Tianqing, since I returned to the sect, I have been cultivating in seclusion to heal my body. Now that my body has recovered and my strength has also recovered, I will soon be able to break through the realm without the shackles and torments of the wildfire. Moreover, Little White is becoming more and more intelligent. After refining the power of my wildfire, it has changed a lot. Master said that Little White has changed. It is no longer a golden-eyed white tiger, but a wildfire white tiger. As Yan, spoke, a happy smile appeared on her little face. She was in a very good mood. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded, that's good. Rest well, we'll meet again in 4 days. After he finished speaking, he and Yan, waved goodbye and returned to their respective residences. After Ji Tianqing returned to the Tianqing courtyard, he once again entered the secret chamber to cultivate. He knew very well that he had offended Shi Wenyu and the Tianjian sect when he had thrown Shi Wenyu into the Sea of Clouds in the 7 Stars Pagoda. This time, when he went to the Tianjian sect to celebrate the birthday, he would definitely run into Shi Wenyu, Qiao Xian, and the others. He might even be retaliated against. He had already mentally prepared himself. He had to seize the time to cultivate and further increase his strength. Tianjian sect, Shenzhen Peak. In the dazzling Divine Sword Palace, there were two experts waiting silently. The sect master of the Tianjian sect was sitting on the sect master's throne. His eyes were fixed on the empty hall, and he was frowning in contemplation. The Taoist Tianji, who was dressed in a white robe and had the demeanor of a transcendent being, stood next to the throne with a horsetail whisk in his hand. He closed his eyes and rested. At this time, a young man in a white robe stepped through the door and entered the hall. This person was Shi Wenyu. Although his robe was brand new and his body was clean and refreshed, his face was still as pale as a sheet of paper. His eyes were filled with tiredness, and his gaze was somewhat dim. Obviously, his injuries had not yet healed, and his body was still very weak. Shi Wenyu walked to the center of the hall, bowed to the Tianjian sect master, and said respectfully, "Disciple greets master." The Tianjian sect master looked at him and saw that his complexion was not good. He could not help but frown, and said in a low voice, "Wenyu, 3 days ago, you came back from the 7 Stars Pagoda with serious injuries. Master asked you to go back and recuperate first. I didn't ask you about the details. Today, Master called you here to listen to your report. What happened to you in the 7 Stars Pagoda? Why didn't you complete the task that Master gave you?" Shi Wenyu's face was full of shame. He quickly cupped his hands and said, "Master, this disciple is incompetent and did not complete the task. Please punish me." That day, disciples from various sects gathered to challenge the 7 Stars Pagoda. The Sky Pillar sect did not send Yunyao to challenge the pagoda, but sent Ji Tianqing instead. Ji Tianqing, that bastard, not only did he break into the 7 Stars Pagoda, but he also brought a jade coffin up and placed it in the 7 Stars array. This disciple was injured in the process of challenging the pagoda. After ascending to the 7th floor, I wanted to seize the soul crystal in the 7 Stars array, but I was stopped by Ji Tianqing. Damn that Ji Tianqing. He seriously injured me, threw me into the sea of clouds, and threw me out of the 7 Stars Pagoda. Speaking of this, the scene at that time appeared in Shi Wenyu's mind again. Monstrous anger and killing intent surged in his heart, and his expression became ferocious. Taoist Tianji, who had been indifferent, could not help but have a slight change in expression after hearing Shi Wenyu's words. A cold killing intent flashed in his eyes. The Tianjian sect master immediately frowned. Doubt and astonishment flashed in his eyes. What? You've already broken through to the 9th level of the mystic comprehending stage. With your strength, there's almost no one below the origin core stage who is a match for you. How could Ji Tianqing seriously injure you? Not only did Shi Wenyu have the strength of the 9th level of the mystic comprehending stage, but he was also a martial genius with a mystic rank bloodline. His sword Dao cultivation was extremely high. Unless he encountered an origin core stage powerhouse, there was almost no mystic comprehending stage martial artist who was a match for him. Before challenging the 7 Stars Pagoda, Shi Wenyu had always thought so until he met Ji Tianqing. Shi Wenyu's face was full of anger and unwillingness. He lowered his head and cupped his hands. "Master, that bastard Ji Tianqing's innate talent is extraordinary. He can't be judged by common sense. This disciple believes that his innate talent is not inferior to Yunyao's at all." The Tianjian sect master's expression became serious. His eyes flashed with a bright light as he muttered in a low voice, "Damn it. The 9 Dragons spiritual pulse has accumulated so much fortune for the Sky Pillar sect. How could it be so powerful? The Sky Pillar sect is extremely lucky to have a genius like Yunyao. Now, Ji Tianqing has appeared. Damn the Sky Pillar sect. Relying on the accumulation of a 1,000-year-old ancient sect and having 2 genius disciples, they're becoming more and more arrogant and despotic. As he spoke, the Tianjian sect's sect master raised his hand in anger and slapped the armrest of his throne. At this moment, Daoist Tianji said with a solemn expression, "Sect master, the Sky Pillar sect is indulging their disciples to wantonly trample on the rules and humiliate our sect's disciples. They're really arrogant and presumptuous to the extreme. Our plan must be carried out. Our sect must replace the Sky Pillar sect as soon as possible and take control of the Tianjin region. Otherwise, the ancient star realm will be in chaos." Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao are Chu Tiantian's right-hand men. If we can get rid of them, we can cut off Chu Tiantian's wings and cause the Sky Pillar sect to suffer heavy losses. There's a good opportunity right now. The sect master's birthday is in a few days. Chu Tiantian will definitely not come because of his status. He will definitely send his 2 personal disciples. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.